I'm selling myself to the devil, and I have exactly 1 year to survive him. That's what ran through my head the moment Dante Moretti slid that contract across the table. Marriage, an heir. 1 year of my life in exchange for my father's freedom. They say desperation makes you do crazy things. They're right, because I walked into that restaurant ready to beg, and I walked out as the future Mrs. Moretti, bound to a man whose eyes held more secrets than the Sicilian night, whose reputation could curdle blood, and whose touch I was about to know far too well. If you want to see how this dangerous deal unfolds, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets the night I decided to ruin my life. Not that I had much of a life to ruin, if I'm being honest. My studio apartment in Brooklyn smelled like turpentine and failure. My last gallery showing had been a disaster, and my father, the man who'd raised me on stories of Renaissance masters and promises that talent would be enough, was 3 weeks away from having his kneecaps introduced to a tire iron, courtesy of Dante Moretti. I'd heard the name before. Everyone in our neighborhood had. You didn't grow up in Red Hook without learning which names to whisper and which to never say at all. Moretti was the latter. Old money, old family, old grudges that went back generations. The kind of man who owned half of Brooklyn and probably had the deed to the other half in a safe somewhere, waiting for the right moment to collect. My father owed him $200,000. $200,000. I'd laughed when I first heard the number. Laughed until I cried, until my ribs ached, until the reality of it settled into my bones like lead poisoning. My father, sweet, foolish Thomas Carter, who couldn't balance a checkbook to save his life, had borrowed money to invest in some scheme. Art forgeries, of all things. He thought he could authenticate them, sell them to private collectors, make enough to finally retire. Instead, he'd gotten scammed. The paintings were garbage, the money was gone, and Dante Moretti wanted his payment. In 3 weeks. I'd tried everything. Called every gallery owner I knew, begged for advances on commissions I didn't have, even considered selling my equipment. My easels, my brushes, the good oil paints I'd saved for months to afford. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. So tonight, I was doing the only thing I had left. I was going to beg. The restaurant was in Dumbo, tucked between a Tesla dealership and a boutique that sold $1,000 handbags. Maria di Sicilia. The awning was a deep burgundy, the kind of color that probably had a fancy name like oxblood or wine reduction. Through the windows, I could see white tablecloths, crystal glasses catching candlelight, people who'd never had to choose between groceries and rent. I stood outside in my thrift store coat, rain plastering my hair to my skull, and tried to remember how to breathe. You can do this, Lena. Just go in there. Find him. Explain that your father is an idiot, but he's your idiot. And surely there's some kind of payment plan, some way to work this out that doesn't involve broken bones. And you planning to stand out here all night, or you going to come in? I jerked my head up. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. His hair was dark, slicked back, and his eyes were the color of espresso. He wasn't smiling. I'm looking for someone, I managed. Yeah, who? Dante Moretti. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, more like a wolf recognizing prey. You got an appointment? No, but... Then you should leave. He started to close the door. I shoved my hand against it, desperation making me stupid. Please, I need 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. My father, Thomas Carter, he owes Mr. Moretti money, and I need to talk to him about... Carter. The man's eyes narrowed. You're the daughter. Yes. Lena. And I know my father screwed up, but if I could just explain... Wait here. The door closed. I stood there shaking, from cold, from fear, from the absolute insanity of what I was doing. Through the window, I watched the man disappear into the back of the restaurant. Seconds crawled by. A couple walked past me, the woman's heels clicking on wet pavement, and I caught her looking at me like I was something that had washed up from the East River. Maybe I was. The door opened again. The man jerked his head. He'll see you. 5 minutes. Don't waste them. I followed him inside, past tables where people ate pasta that probably cost $50 a plate, past a bar where a woman in pearls laughed at something her companion said. The man led me through a door marked private. down a hallway that smelled like expensive cologne and old wood, and finally to another door. He knocked twice, opened it without waiting for an answer. "The Carter girl," he announced, then stepped aside. The office was smaller than I expected. Dark wood paneling, a desk that looked like it had survived a war, bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes I was pretty sure no one had ever read. And behind the desk, backlit by a window that overlooked the East River, sat the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. No. Not beautiful. That was the wrong word. Dangerous. Dante Moretti was maybe 35, with black hair that curled slightly at his collar and a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp jaw, straight nose, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile somewhere around puberty. He wore a black suit, black shirt, no tie. His hands were folded on the desk in front of him. Elegant hands, I noticed stupidly, the kind you'd see in a painting. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Gray, winter sky gray, and completely, utterly empty. "Miss Carter." His voice was smooth, cultured, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. "You're dripping on my floor." I looked down. He was right. A puddle was forming around my shoes. Sorry, I didn't." "Sit." It wasn't a suggestion. I sat in one of the leather chairs across from his desk, my wet coat squelching embarrassingly. Up close, I could see the details I'd missed from the doorway. The thin scar that ran along his left cheekbone. The expensive watch on his wrist. The way he was looking at me like I was a bug that had crawled onto his desk, and he was deciding whether to flick me away or crush me. "You have 5 minutes," he said. "Speak." My prepared speech evaporated. Every eloquent argument, every carefully crafted plea, gone. What came out instead was the truth, raw and desperate. "My father's an idiot." One dark eyebrow rose slightly. "Go on." "He borrowed money from you, a lot of money. And he lost it because he trusted the wrong people and made stupid decisions. And I know he has to pay it back. I'm not asking you to forgive the debt. I'm just asking for time. More time. I'm an artist. I can work. I can get commissions, sell paintings, do murals, whatever it takes. But 3 weeks isn't enough, please. If you could just give us 6 months, maybe a year." "No." The word landed like a gavel. Final. Absolute. "Please," I tried again. "My father." "Your father," Dante interrupted, his voice still calm, still quiet, "borrowed $200,000 9 months ago. I gave him 9 months to repay it. He's had time. He chose to waste it. He was trying to cheat me." Dante leaned forward slightly, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, something dark, woody, expensive. He thought he could pass off forgeries as authentic pieces and pocket the difference. When that failed, he disappeared. Stopped answering calls, stopped showing up to meetings. Did you know that? I didn't, but it sounded exactly like something my father would do. "He's scared," I said weakly. "He should be." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how small I was, how out of my depth. This man wasn't going to negotiate. He wasn't going to show mercy. He was going to do exactly what men like him always did, take what he was owed, no matter the cost. "What do you want?" I heard myself ask. "What would it take for you to let this go?" "Let it go?" Dante's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Miss Carter, I don't let things go. It sets a bad precedent." "Then what? You're going to hurt him? Kill him?" "I'm going to send a message. Your father stole from me. People need to understand what happens when someone steals from me." "He didn't steal. He took my money under false pretenses. In my world, that's theft." Dante stood, walking around the desk with a predator's grace. He was tall, easily 6'2", and as he moved closer, I had to fight the urge to shrink back in my chair. "Your 5 minutes are up, Miss Carter. Lorenzo will show you out." "Wait." I stood too quickly, nearly knocking over the chair. "There has to be something I can do. Some way to make this right." He stopped, turned, looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since I'd walked into his office. His gaze traveled from my dripping hair to my cheap coat to my paint-stained hands. Not hungry, not interested, just assessing. Like I was a painting he was considering buying, and he wasn't sure I was worth the investment. What could you possibly offer me? He asked. I didn't let myself think. Because if I thought about it, if I let logic or self-preservation kick in, I'd never say it. Me. Silence. Long enough that I could hear my pulse hammering in my ears. Then Dante laughed. It was a low, dark sound, completely devoid of humor. You? I'm serious. I don't doubt that. I'm simply trying to understand what you think you're worth. He moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. You're offering yourself in exchange for $200,000. That's quite a high estimation of your value. Heat flooded my cheeks. That's not what I meant. No? Then explain. Swallowed hard. I can work for you, whatever you need, cleaning, cooking, running errands. I can paint, if you have properties that need murals, or I have people for those things. Then what do you need? The question hung in the air between us. Dante studied me, his expression unreadable, and I realized with a jolt that I had no idea what I'd just offered. No idea what this man might ask of me. No idea what I'd be willing to do to save my father. No idea how far I was willing to fall. Interesting, Dante finally said. He walked back to his desk, pressed a button on his phone. Lorenzo, cancel my 8 o'clock. Boss, cancel it. He released the button, then gestured to the chair I'd vacated. Sit, Miss Carter. It seems we have things to discuss after all. I sat. My legs were shaking. Dante didn't sit. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed, watching me with those empty gray eyes. You're 26 years old, unmarried, no children. You live alone in Brooklyn. You make approximately $30,000 a year from your art, and you have $17,000 in student loan debt. Should I continue? My mouth went dry. How do you... I make it my business to know about people who owe me money, and their families. He tilted his head slightly. You're loyal, foolishly so. You came here tonight knowing I could have you thrown out, or worse, and you came anyway. He's my father. Yes. And that loyalty is valuable. Dante paused. I'm going to make you an offer, Miss Carter. One time. If you refuse, you leave, and we never speak again. Your father's debt comes due in 3 weeks, and I collect. Understood? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I need a wife. Of all the things I'd expected him to say, that wasn't on the list. What? A wife. Specifically, I need to be married within the next 6 months to meet the terms of my grandfather's will. If I'm not married by my 36th birthday, I lose control of the family business. Everything I've built goes to my cousin Marco. I can't allow that to happen. I stared at him. You want to marry me? I want a business arrangement. Marriage in name only. 1 year. You live in my home, you appear with me at necessary functions, and at the end of the year, we divorce. In exchange, your father's debt is erased. That's insane. That's the offer. Why me? You could marry anyone, someone from your world, someone who would expect something from me, Dante finished. Affection, attention, a real marriage. I don't have time for that. I don't have patience for it. You, Miss Carter, are desperate. Desperate people make excellent business partners. They understand the terms. They don't ask for more than what's offered. It should have stung. It probably would have if he hadn't been absolutely right. And at the end of the year, I asked, divorce, generous settlement. You walk away with enough money to pay off your debts and fund your art for a decade, maybe 2. You're serious. I'm always serious. I looked around the office, trying to find something to anchor myself to. This couldn't be real. Men like Dante Moretti didn't propose to women like me. They didn't offer marriage as a solution to debt. They didn't... There's one other condition, Dante said, and something in his voice made me look up sharply. The will requires that I not only be married, but that I have an heir, a child. If I don't have a child by my 37th birthday, the inheritance still goes to Marco. My stomach dropped. You want me to have my child? Yes. No. The word came out strangled. No, that's not... I can't... Then your father's debt comes due in 3 weeks. Dante's voice was flat, emotionless. Those are the terms, Miss Carter. Marriage, 1 year, a child. In exchange, your father goes free and you walk away wealthy enough to never have to worry about money again. Couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot, too... I need an answer now, Dante said. Now? You're asking me to agree to have your child and you need an answer now? Yes. You can't. I stood, pacing to the window, trying to think, trying to find some way out of this that didn't end with my father bleeding in an alley or me signing away my life to a stranger. What if I can't have children? Medical exams before the marriage. If you can't conceive naturally, we explore other options. Other options, I repeated numbly. IVF, surrogacy, whatever's necessary. And if I refuse? Then we're done here. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the city glittered, indifferent and beautiful. Somewhere out there, my father was probably drinking whiskey and convincing himself everything would work out, that his daughter would figure something out, that he wouldn't have to face the consequences of his choices. He never did, and I always had. I turned around. Dante was watching me, patient as a snake. If I agree, I said slowly, I want it in writing. Every term. The debt forgiven, the settlement amount, the divorce conditions. Everything. Of course. And I want my own lawyer to review it. I'll provide one. No, my own. Someone who isn't on your payroll. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered in Dante's eyes. Acceptable. And during the year, the marriage, I keep working. I keep my studio. I keep my life. Within reason. What does that mean? It means you live in my home, you attend functions with me, you play the role of my wife convincingly. But your art, your studio time, that's yours, as long as it doesn't interfere with your obligations. I laughed, a broken sound. My obligations. You mean playing house with you and having your baby? Yes. You're asking me to sell myself. I'm offering you a choice. Dante pushed off from the desk, moving toward me with that same predatory grace. Your father sold himself 9 months ago when he took my money. Now you can buy him back. Those are the terms. Take them or leave them. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough to smell that dark cologne again. What's it going to be, Lena Carter? He asked softly. Are you desperate enough to save your father? Or are you going to walk out of here and let him face what's coming? I thought about my father, about the way he'd read to me when I was little, doing all the voices, making me laugh until my sides hurt. The way he'd encouraged my art even when everyone else said I should get a real job. The way he'd held me after my mother died and promised me we'd get through it together. He was a fool, a dreamer, a man who made terrible decisions and expected other people to clean up his messes. He was also the only family I had left. I met Dante's eyes. I want the debt forgiven the moment I signed the contract. Not after the marriage, not after the baby, immediately. Done. And I want to see my father whenever I want, no restrictions. Reasonable. And, I swallowed hard, and you don't touch me, not until we need to. For the baby. Something dark moved through Dante's expression. I'm not interested in an unwilling woman, Miss Carter. When we conceive our child, it will be clinical, efficient, nothing more. Somehow, that made it worse, but I nodded. Then yes, I'll do it. Say it clearly. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll have your child. I'll play your wife for a year. In exchange, you forgive my father's debt and pay me what we agree on. Dante smiled. It was the first real expression I'd seen from him, and it was terrifying, cold and sharp as a blade. Excellent, he said. Lorenzo will have a car take you home. Tomorrow, my lawyer will contact you with the contract. You have 48 hours to review it. If you sign, we'll schedule the medical exams and set a wedding date. That's it? That's it. He walked back to his desk, already dismissing me. Unless you'd like to seal our agreement with a kiss? I couldn't tell if he was joking. I didn't want to find out. I'll see myself out, I said. Lorenzo will escort you. I don't need... Lorenzo will escort you. It wasn't a request. I left the office on shaking legs. Lorenzo was waiting in the hallway, his expression carefully neutral. He led me back through the restaurant, past the happy diners, past the woman in pearls, past the life I was about to leave behind, and out into the rain. A black town car was already waiting at the curb. "For you," Lorenzo said, opening the back door. I got in because I didn't know what else to do. The driver pulled away from the curb, and I watched Maria de Sicilia disappear behind us, swallowed by the rain and the night. My phone buzzed, a text from my father. "How'd the gallery meeting go?" I told him I had a meeting with a potential buyer, told him I might have a lead on some money. I hadn't told him where I was really going, what I was really doing. I typed back, "Good. I think I found a solution." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "That's my girl. Knew you'd figure something out." I turned off my phone and stared out at the city streaming past. Brooklyn Heights gave way to downtown to my neighborhood. The nice buildings replaced by warehouses and auto shops and bodegas with security gates. The driver pulled up in front of my building, a narrow brownstone divided into 6 apartments, mine on the top floor with a skylight I'd installed myself and a radiator that only worked when it felt like it. "Thank you," I told the driver. He nodded without speaking. I climbed the stairs slowly, counting each step. 42 to my floor, I'd counted them 1,000 times. 42 steps away from the street, from the noise, from the world. Now I was 42 steps away from the decision I'd just made. Inside my apartment, I locked the door and leaned against it. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror across the room. Wet hair, pale face, eyes too wide. I looked terrified. I was terrified. I'd just agreed to marry a man I didn't know, have his child, spend a year of my life pretending to be something I wasn't. And the worst part, the part that made my stomach twist, was that some small, traitorous part of me was almost relieved. Because for the first time in 9 months, I wasn't alone in this. Wasn't carrying the weight of my father's mistakes by myself. Dante Moretti might be cold, might be dangerous, might be using me as much as I was using him. But he was going to fix this. And maybe that made me just as foolish as my father. The contract arrived exactly 24 hours later. I was in my studio, a converted storage room in the basement of a coffee shop in Williamsburg, when Lorenzo walked in carrying a leather portfolio. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself, just appeared like a well-dressed ghost and set the portfolio on my work table, carefully avoiding the wet canvas I'd been working on. "For Mr. Moretti," he said. I stared at it like it might bite me. "What if I'm not ready to look at it yet?" "Then you're wasting time. You have 48 hours from yesterday. That leaves you 24. He pulled out a business card, set it next to the portfolio. "This is Victoria Chen. She's a family law attorney, not affiliated with Mr. Moretti. He's paid for 10 hours of her time to review the contract with you. More if you need it." "He paid for my lawyer?" "Consider it a gesture of good faith." Lorenzo headed for the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Miss Carter, I've worked for Dante Moretti for 8 years. He's a hard man. Fair, but hard. If he made you a promise, he'll keep it. Just make sure you keep yours." Then he was gone. I opened the portfolio with trembling hands. The contract was 47 pages long, 47 pages outlining exactly what I'd agreed to. Marriage terms, financial arrangements, living conditions, dissolution procedures, medical requirements, confidentiality clauses. There was even a section on social media usage and public appearances. And buried on page 32 in clinical legal language that made my skin crawl. Article 12, Conception and Birth. The parties agree that the wife shall make reasonable efforts to conceive a child with the husband within the first six months of marriage. Should natural conception prove unsuccessful after 6 months of documented attempts, the parties agree to pursue medically assisted reproductive technologies, including but not limited to intrauterine insemination, IUI, or in vitro fertilization, IVF. I called Victoria Chen. She answered on the second ring. "Miss Carter, I was expecting your call." "This contract," I said. "Is it legal?" "Unfortunately, yes. Unusual, but legal. I've seen similar arrangements before, though rarely this comprehensive." "He wants me to have his baby." "Yes, that's clearly outlined in Article 12. However, there are some protections built in. You maintain full medical autonomy. You can refuse any procedure you're not comfortable with. The conception timeline is described as reasonable efforts, which gives you some flexibility. And if you're unable to conceive for medical reasons, the contract allows for termination without penalty. What about custody? After the divorce, papers rustled on her end. That's in Article 15. Mr. Moretti retains primary custody, with you having visitation rights. However, there's a generous child support structure and educational expenses are fully covered. It's actually quite favorable to you. Favorable. As if selling my child was something that could be favorable. Miss Carter, are you still there? What would you do? I asked. If you were me. A long pause. That's not a question I can answer. This is a business transaction, and like any transaction, you have to weigh the costs against the benefits. But I will say this, make sure you understand exactly what you're agreeing to, not just legally, but emotionally, because a year is a long time to live a lie. I met with her twice more over the next 24 hours. We went through every clause, every subcategory, every possible scenario. She negotiated 3 changes on my behalf. I kept my apartment as a separate property, I had guaranteed studio time, and the divorce settlement increased from $2 million to $2.5. $2.5 million for a year of my life and a child I'd have to give up. When I asked Dante's lawyer why he agreed to the changes so easily, the man smiled. Mr. Moretti values efficiency more than money, he said. As long as you fulfill your end of the bargain, the details are negotiable. On the morning of the 3rd day, I signed the contract in Victoria Chen's office. My hand shook so badly I could barely write my name. You can still change your mind, Victoria said gently. But I couldn't, because that morning my father had called to tell me that someone had left a dead rat on his doorstep with a note. 2 weeks. I signed, dated, initialed every page. Somewhere across the city, Dante Moretti was doing the same. When it was done, Victoria handed me a copy and a check. $50,000, the first installment of my payment. Congratulations, Miss Carter, she said. You're engaged. The medical exams were worse than I expected. I'd anticipated embarrassment, discomfort. Instead, I got a team of doctors who treated me like a broodmare being evaluated for purchase. Blood work, physical exam, internal ultrasound, fertility testing. They even did a psychological evaluation, 30 minutes with a doctor who asked if I understood the emotional implications of surrogacy. This isn't surrogacy, I told her. This is a marriage. She made a note on her clipboard and didn't argue. I was deemed an excellent candidate for conception. The report was delivered to me in a sealed envelope with the bedside manner of a lab result. Dante's exam, I assumed, went similarly. I didn't ask. We'd had exactly 2 conversations since signing the contract, both brief, both conducted through lawyers. The wedding was scheduled for 2 weeks away. My father called me every day asking where the money had come from, how I'd managed it. I told him an anonymous donor had paid off his debt. Told him not to ask questions. Told him he was safe now, but if he ever gambled again, I'd let Dante Moretti finish what he started. He cried, thanked me, promised to do better. I wanted to believe him. I spent those 2 weeks in a strange limbo. Half of me kept painting, kept teaching my Wednesday afternoon art class at the community center, kept living my normal life. The other half moved through the motions of becoming Mrs. Dante Moretti. A designer came to my apartment with dresses. I chose the simplest one. Cream silk, no veil, no train. It felt wrong to wear white. This wasn't that kind of wedding. A stylist asked about my hair and makeup preferences. I told her I didn't care. Lorenzo delivered a prenuptial agreement to sign, as if the 47-page contract wasn't enough. And through it all, I didn't see Dante. Not once. Until the wedding day. It was held at a courthouse in Manhattan. Small ceremony, bare minimum of witnesses. Lorenzo was there, and Dante's lawyer, and a woman I didn't recognize, his aunt, someone whispered. And Dante himself. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, his dark hair perfect, his expression unreadable. He looked at me once when I walked in, a single sweeping glance from head to toe, then turned back to the judge. The ceremony lasted 7 minutes. We exchanged rings, white gold bands, simple, cold. We said the words. We signed the papers. And when the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Dante leaned in and pressed his lips to mine for exactly 3 seconds. His lips were soft. His hand on my waist was firm, and the kiss was utterly, completely devoid of feeling. Then it was over. "Congratulations," the judge said. We left the courthouse as husband and wife. A car was waiting, not the town car from before, but a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. Lorenzo opened the door. Dante gestured for me to get in first. I did. He slid in beside me, and the door closed, sealing us in together. The driver pulled into traffic without asking for directions. "Where are we going?" I asked, my first words to my husband. "Home," Dante said. "My apartment is no longer your primary residence. Your belongings were moved this morning." I turned to stare at him. "You moved my things without asking me?" "It was in the contract, page 19, subsection 4. Upon marriage, the wife shall reside at the husband's primary residence." "You could have warned me." "I'm telling you now." The car wound through Manhattan, heading uptown, past the boutiques and museums, past Central Park, into a neighborhood where the buildings had doormen and the trees were professionally maintained. We stopped in front of a limestone townhouse on East 72nd Street. 5 stories, black iron gates, windows that glowed with warm light. "This is home," Dante said. He got out. I followed, my legs unsteady in the heels the stylist had picked out. The front door opened before we reached it. A woman stood there, late 50s, gray hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a black dress and pearls. She had kind eyes. "Welcome home, Mr. Moretti," she said. Then to me, "Mrs. Moretti, I'm Eleanor, the housekeeper. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask." "Thank you," I managed. Inside, the townhouse was exactly what I'd expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art on the walls, real art, the kind you saw in museums. A sweeping staircase led to the upper floors. "Eleanor will show you to your room," Dante said. He was already walking toward a hallway, shrugging out of his jacket. "Dinner is at 8. Don't be late." "Wait!" I hurried after him. "My room? We're not—" He turned, one eyebrow raised. "Not what?" "Sharing a bedroom?" "Did you want to share a bedroom, Lena?" The way he said my name, flat, businesslike, made it clear exactly how stupid that question was. "No," I said. "I just thought, you thought this was a real marriage. It's not. You have your space, I have mine. We intersect when necessary. That's the arrangement." He started walking again. "Eleanor will explain the house rules. I have calls to make." He disappeared down the hallway, leaving me standing in the foyer with Eleanor, feeling like I'd just been dismissed. "This way, Mrs. Moretti," Eleanor said gently. She led me upstairs, past the 2nd floor, past the 3rd, all the way to the 4th. My room, my suite really, took up half the floor. Bedroom with a king-size bed, sitting area with a fireplace, bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. My clothes were already unpacked, hung in a walk-in closet the size of my old apartment. "Mr. Moretti's rooms are on the 3rd floor," Eleanor explained. "You won't be disturbed unless you request it. Breakfast is at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 8. Mr. Moretti keeps to a strict schedule." "What if I'm not hungry at those times?" "Then the kitchen is available whenever you need it." She moved to the window, adjusting the curtains. "He's a good man, Mrs. Moretti. I know he can seem cold, but he's fair. He'll take care of you." I wasn't sure what to say to that. "Think you seemed wrong." So I just nodded. Eleanor left me alone in my golden cage. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to remember how to breathe. This was my life now. This house. This room. This man who'd kissed me like I was a signature on a contract and walked away without looking back. 1 year. I could survive 1 year. I had to. Dinner at 8 turned out to be a lonely affair. I came down at 7:55 wearing jeans and a sweater because I'd be damned if I was going to dress up to eat in my own house. Except it wasn't my house, was it? It was Dante's. I was just living in it, like expensive furniture he'd acquired for a specific purpose. The dining room could have seated 20 people easily. Long mahogany table, more crystal, paintings that probably had insurance policies. Eleanor had set 2 places at opposite ends of the table, a distance that felt deliberately cruel. Dante was already seated, reading something on his phone. He changed into dark slacks and a navy sweater that made his gray eyes look almost silver. He didn't look up when I entered. I sat. A moment later, Eleanor appeared with the first course, some kind of soup that smelled like herbs and cream. "Thank you," I said. She smiled and disappeared. Dante still hadn't looked up from his phone. I ate my soup in silence. It was delicious. I barely tasted it. The second course arrived. Fish, vegetables arranged like art. I pushed them around my plate. "If the food isn't to your liking, Eleanor can prepare something else," Dante said, his first words since I'd sat down. "The food is fine." "Then eat it." I set down my fork with more force than necessary. "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat. The doctors were clear about nutritional requirements." "The doctors can go to hell." That got his attention. He set down his phone, finally meeting my eyes. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." I was suddenly irrationally angry. At him, at this situation, at myself for agreeing to it. I'm not some broodmare you can order around. If I'm not hungry, I'm not eating. The contract specifies. I don't care what the contract specifies. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You want me to eat? Try asking nicely. Try having a conversation. Try treating me like a person instead of a business acquisition." Dante's expression didn't change. "Sit down, Lena." "No." "Sit down. Make me." For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I half expected him to explode, to show some emotion, anger, frustration, anything. Instead, he picked up his phone again. "Eleanor," he said when she appeared, "Mrs. Moretti will take her dinner in her room." "Of course, sir." "I don't want dinner in my room," I snapped. "Then sit down and eat it here," Dante replied, still not looking at me. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I turned and walked out, taking the stairs 2 at a time until I reached my floor. My suite. My beautiful, empty cage. I slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. 20 minutes later, Eleanor knocked softly and brought in a tray. She didn't say anything, just set it on the table by the window and left. The food was still warm. I ate it because I actually was hungry, hating myself for giving in. That night, I lay in my enormous bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house. Somewhere below me, Dante was probably working, or reading, or doing whatever emotionless billionaires did in their spare time. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "How's married life?" I told him I'd eloped. Quick ceremony, very private. He'd been hurt that he wasn't invited, but I'd convinced him it was better this way, simpler. "Fine," I typed back. "Still getting used to everything. He treating you right?" I almost laughed. "Yes, Dad. He's treating me fine." Another lie to add to the pile. The first week passed in a blur of uncomfortable silence and careful avoidance. Dante left for work before I woke up and came home after I'd gone to bed. We saw each other at dinner when I bothered to show up and exchanged maybe 20 words total. Eleanor tried to make things easier. She showed me the house, explained Dante's routines, gave me the Wi-Fi password like it was a state secret. She told me about the gym in the basement, the library on the second floor, the roof terrace I could use whenever I wanted. "Mr. Moretti values his privacy," she explained, "but he's not unreasonable. As long as you respect his space, he'll respect yours." Except I didn't want my space respected. I wanted to understand what the hell I'd gotten myself into. On the 8th day, I broke. I'd been painting in the small studio Eleanor had set up for me, a converted bedroom on my floor with good light and enough space for my easel. I was working on a piece I'd started months ago, a landscape I couldn't seem to finish when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Dante never came to my floor. I set down my brush and opened the door. He was standing there in his work clothes, charcoal suit, white shirt, tie loosened like he'd been tugging at it. He looked tired. "We need to talk," he said. "Now you want to talk?" "There's an event tomorrow night, family dinner. You need to attend." "That's what you came up to tell me? You couldn't text?" "I don't text my wife about family obligations." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up that perfect style. "This is important, Lena. My aunt is hosting. The whole family will be there. They need to meet you." "Why? So they can judge me? So they can see that I'm married, that I'm fulfilling the terms of my grandfather's will." He met my eyes. "This is what you agreed to. Public appearances. Playing the role." "I know what I agreed to." "Then tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Wear something appropriate." He turned to leave. I grabbed his arm without thinking, the first time I'd touched him since our 3-second wedding kiss. He went very still. I don't have anything appropriate, I said. I don't know what appropriate means in your world. For a second, something almost like understanding crossed his face. Then it was gone. Eleanor will help you. She knows what's expected. And what is expected, Dante? Am I supposed to smile and nod and pretend we're in love? Am I supposed to hang on your arm and laugh at your jokes? What exactly is my role in this performance? You're supposed to be my wife. I am your wife, legally, but that's all. Then make it look like more. His voice was cold again, distant. That's what I'm paying you for. He pulled his arm free and walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway with paint on my hands and anger burning in my chest. Eleanor appeared within the hour with 3 dresses draped over her arm. Navy, black, and deep green, all elegant, all expensive, all completely unlike anything I'd ever worn. The green, she said. It'll bring out your eyes. And it's Mr. Moretti's favorite color, though he'd never admit it. How long have you worked for him? I asked as she hung the dresses in my closet. 8 years, since before his grandfather died. What was his grandfather like? Eleanor paused. Difficult, demanding. He had very specific ideas about what the family should be, who they should marry, how they should live. She smoothed the green dress. Mister? Moretti spent his whole life trying to meet those expectations. Sometimes I think he forgot how to be anything else. Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for him? No, just help you understand him? She turned to face me. He's not cruel, Mrs. Moretti. He's just broken in ways he doesn't know how to fix. I thought about that all night. About Dante growing up under the weight of those expectations. About the cold, empty house he'd inherited, along with the family business. About the fact that his own grandfather had manipulated him from beyond the grave, forcing him into a marriage he didn't want just to keep control of everything he'd built. Maybe we were both trapped. The family dinner was held at a brownstone in the West Village that made Dante's townhouse look modest. His Aunt Cecilia answered the door, the woman from the wedding, tall and elegant with silver hair and pearls that probably cost more than my education. Dante, darling. She kissed both his cheeks, then turned to me. And this must be your bride. How unexpected. Lena, I said, offering my hand. She looked at it like I'd offered her a dead fish. Cecilia Moretti Ricci, please come in. Everyone is dying to meet you. Everyone turned out to be about 30 people scattered through the first floor. Dante's cousins, their spouses, various aunts and uncles, all dressed like they were going to the opera. They all stopped talking when we walked in. Dante's hand settled on the small of my back, possessive, warm through the thin fabric of the green dress. Smile, he murmured in my ear. I smiled. It felt like baring teeth. Cecilia clapped her hands. Everyone, this is Dante's wife, Lena. Let's make her feel welcome, shall we? The next hour was a gauntlet of introductions I'd never remember. Everyone was polite. Everyone was watching. And everyone, I realized slowly, was waiting for me to fail some test I didn't know I was taking. Dinner was even worse. We were seated at a long table, Dante at one end, his cousin Marco at the other, me somewhere in the middle between 2 women who introduced themselves as Marco's wife Sophia and another cousin named Gianna. So Lena, Sophia said sweetly. She had the kind of beauty that took work, perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect smile. How did you and Dante meet? I glanced down the table at Dante. He was talking to an older man, not looking at me. No help there. Through business, I said. How mysterious. What kind of business? My father's business. And what does your father do? The questions kept coming, each one a little sharper, a little more pointed. What did I do for work? Where did I grow up? Where did I go to school? Did I have family in the city? I answered honestly, mostly. I was an artist. I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to CUNY, not some Ivy League school. My mother was dead. My father was a mess. And no, I didn't have any connections to their world. How refreshing, Gianna said, in a tone that made it clear it was anything but. Dante usually dates models or lawyers, women with careers. I have a career. Of course you do, dear. How lovely. By the time the main course arrived, I wanted to stab someone with my salad fork, preferably Sophia, who kept looking at Dante with an expression that suggested they had history. "You must be so excited," Sophia continued, "about starting a family. Dante's always been so focused on business. It's wonderful that he's finally settling down." I took a long drink of wine, thrilled. "Have you picked out names yet?" "We're not pregnant," I said, louder than I intended. Several conversations stopped. "We just got married. We're not in a rush." "Oh, but Dante's birthday is coming up, isn't it?" This from Marco, down at the other end of the table. He had Dante's dark hair, but his eyes were brown instead of gray, and there was something mean in them. 36. That's the deadline, right? For the inheritance? The room went very quiet. Dante set down his wine glass carefully. "Marco." "What?" "I'm just saying, if you want to meet grandfather's conditions, you'd better get started. Unless Lena's already pregnant, is that why you rushed the wedding?" "Shut up, Marco," someone muttered, but Marco was on a roll. He stood raising his glass. "A toast to my cousin Dante and his beautiful bride. May their marriage be blessed with many children." Quickly, very, very quickly. Laughter rippled through the room, uncomfortable, ugly laughter. I looked at Dante. His face was completely blank, but his hand had curled into a fist on the table. "Thank you, Marco," he said quietly. "Always a pleasure to be reminded of family loyalty." "Just looking out for you, cousin. Wouldn't want you to lose everything because you couldn't perform your husbandly duties." I stood up, every eye turned to me. "Marco," I said. "That's your name, right? Marco?" "That's right, sweetheart." "Don't call me sweetheart, and don't talk about my husband like that." His smile widened. "Or what? Or I'll make sure everyone in this room knows exactly what kind of man roots for his own cousin to fail. What kind of man celebrates the idea of someone losing everything their grandfather built? What kind of pathetic, jealous worm needs to tear others down to feel big?" The room was dead silent now. Marco's face had gone red. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Maybe not, but I know you're trying to humiliate Dante at a family dinner, in front of his wife, and I know that says a hell of a lot more about you than it does about us." I picked up my wine glass, drained it, and set it down with a sharp clink. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need some air." I walked out before anyone could respond, through the dining room, through the foyer, out onto the front steps. My hands were shaking, from anger, from adrenaline, from the realization that I'd just made a scene at my first family dinner. The door opened behind me. I expected Eleanor, or maybe Cecilia, coming to deliver some cutting remark. It was Dante. He stood there for a moment, backlit by the warm light from inside, his expression unreadable. Then he descended the steps and stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "That was stupid," he said. "Probably. Marco won't forget that." "Good. Maybe he'll think twice before running his mouth again." Dante made a sound that might have been a laugh. Might have been. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did. You're my husband. Even if this is fake, even if we can barely stand each other, I'm not going to sit there and let him talk about you like that." "Why?" I turned to look at him. Really look at him. In the streetlight, I could see the exhaustion in his face, the tension he carried in his shoulders. For the first time, he didn't look like some untouchable billionaire. He looked human. "Because nobody deserves that," I said quietly. "Not even you." We stood there in silence for a long moment. Inside, I could hear the murmur of conversation resuming, probably everyone talking about the crazy woman Dante had married. "We should go back in," I finally said. "No, we're leaving." "But they've met you. That was the point. We've stayed long enough." He pulled out his phone, texted someone. "Car will be here in 2 minutes." "Your aunt is going to be furious." "My aunt is always furious about something." He looked at me, and something in his expression had shifted. "You were magnificent in there, completely inappropriate and probably going to make my life hell for the next month. But magnificent." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "I didn't do it for you." "I know. You did it because Marco was being an ass and you can't stand injustice, even when it's directed at someone you don't particularly like." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Eleanor told me you have a temper." "Eleanor talks too much. She likes you. That's rare." The car pulled up. A different one this time, smaller, with Lorenzo at the wheel. Dante opened the door for me, and I slid in. He followed, and we drove away from the brownstone, from the family, from Marco's smirking face. "They hate me," I said. "They hate everyone. Don't take it personally." "Easy for you to say." "Lena," he shifted to look at me. "You handled yourself better than most people would have, better than some family members I could name. Marco's a bully. He's been trying to undermine me since we were children. Tonight, you didn't let him. He's really going to try to take the company from you?" "He's going to try. Whether he succeeds depends on whether I meet the terms of the will." Dante's jaw tightened. My grandfather was a sadistic old bastard. He knew exactly what he was doing when he wrote those conditions. Marry and produce an heir, or lose everything. He thought it would force me to settle down, to build a proper family legacy. What if you don't want that? Doesn't matter what I want, it matters what I have to do. That's a sad way to live. It's the only way I know. We rode the rest of the way in silence. When we got home, Dante disappeared into his study without another word. I went upstairs, kicked off the heels that had been killing me all night, and changed into sweats. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I found myself standing outside Dante's study on the 3rd floor, my hand raised to knock. The door opened before I could. He stood there, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking surprised to see me. "Did you need something?" he asked. "I don't know how to do this," I blurted out. "I don't know how to be your wife. I don't know the rules. I don't know what's expected. I don't know how to talk to those people. I'm drowning here, Dante, and you're not helping." He studied me for a long moment. Then he stepped back, holding the door open. "Come in." His study was smaller than I expected, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk covered in papers. There was a half-empty glass of scotch on a side table, a fire burning in the fireplace. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. I sat. He poured another scotch, handed it to me, then leaned against his desk. "What do you want to know?" he asked. "Everything. Who these people are, what they expect, how to survive the next year without completely humiliating you." You didn't humiliate me tonight. I made a scene. You defended your husband. There's a difference." He took a drink. "My family is complicated. Old money, old grudges, old traditions. They value appearances above everything. Marco wants the company because his father wanted it, and his father died without getting it. Cecilia thinks I should have married someone from our world. Sophia had a thing with you," I finished. His eyebrow rose. "How did you—" "The way she looked at you, like she was remembering something specific. We dated, years ago. It didn't work out." "Why not?" "She wanted things I couldn't give her. Emotional availability, romance, a husband who actually loved her." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was describing a business transaction. "I'm not built for that, Lena. I don't do feelings. I don't do vulnerability. I do what's necessary to maintain control and protect what's mine. That sounds lonely. It's efficient. It's sad." He looked at me for a long moment. "Maybe, but it's kept me alive this long." I wanted to ask what that meant, wanted to understand the shadows I kept glimpsing behind those gray eyes. But his walls were back up, his expression closed. "The point is," he continued, "you don't have to be like them. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. What you did tonight, standing up to Marco, refusing to let him bully us, that's more valuable than fitting in. Your aunt didn't seem to think so. My aunt's opinion doesn't matter. What matters is that the family sees we're united, that they believe this marriage is real. How are we supposed to make them believe that when we barely talk? We're talking now." "This isn't talking, Dante. This is you giving me a briefing." I set down the scotch, suddenly too tired for this. "I should go. It's late." I stood. He caught my wrist, gently, but enough to stop me. "Wait," he said. "You're right. I haven't made this easy for you. I've been treating you like a business partner, because that's all I know how to do. But if we're going to convince people this is real, we need to do better. What are you suggesting?" "Breakfast, tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. We eat together, we talk, we figure out how to make this work." He released my wrist. "If you're willing." Are you actually asking me something instead of ordering me? I'm asking. I should have said no, should have maintained the distance between us. But there was something in his voice, something almost vulnerable, that made me hesitate. Fine, I said. Breakfast, 7 o'clock. But if you spend the whole time on your phone, I'm leaving. Agreed. I left before he could see the small smile I couldn't quite suppress. Maybe this marriage wasn't completely hopeless after all. The next morning, I came down at 7 to find Dante already in the breakfast room, a smaller, sunlit space off the kitchen. He was reading a newspaper, but he set it down when I entered. Good morning, he said. Morning. Eleanor had set out coffee, pastries, fruit. I poured myself a cup and sat across from Dante, waiting to see if he'd actually keep his word. He folded the newspaper and set it aside. How did you sleep? Fine. You? Adequately. He reached for a croissant, and I noticed his hands, elegant as I'd thought the first night, but with small scars across the knuckles. I have a meeting this afternoon with my lawyers. They're drafting the paperwork to formally contest Marco's claim to the company. Can he really take it from you? If I don't meet the terms of the will, yes. The company goes to him, along with most of the family assets. I'd keep some personal holdings, but everything my grandfather built would be his. And that's why you need the baby. Yes, he met my eyes. I know that's uncomfortable for you. It's not exactly romantic. Romance wasn't part of the contract. No, but I should acknowledge that asking you to have a child you'll have to give up is difficult, unfair even. I nearly dropped my coffee. Dante Moretti acknowledging something was unfair. Maybe hell had frozen over. I knew what I was agreeing to, I said. Knowing and experiencing are different things. He paused. The doctors want to schedule the first attempt for next month, after you've had time to adjust to living here. Is that acceptable? My stomach clenched. The first attempt. You mean the medical procedure? IUI, most likely, unless you'd prefer to try naturally first. No. The word came out too fast. No, the procedure is fine. All right, I'll have them contact you to schedule it. He took a drink of coffee. In the meantime, we need to work on appearing more comfortable together. The family is already suspicious. Marco's going to be watching for any sign this marriage is fake. What do you suggest? We spend time together, go out to dinner, attend events, learn about each other so we can have conversations that sound natural. He pulled out his phone, then seemed to remember our agreement and set it aside. Tell me something about yourself. Something I wouldn't know from a background check. Like what? Anything. Your favorite color, your worst habit, why you became an artist. I thought about it. I became an artist because my mother died when I was 13. Cancer. And I didn't know how to deal with it. Talking didn't help, crying didn't help, so I started drawing. It was the only way I could get the feelings out without falling apart. Dante's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. I took a bite of croissant, buying time. Your turn. Why did you take over the family business instead of doing something else? Because there was never anything else. My grandfather groomed me for it from the time I was old enough to understand what the company was. Every decision I made, every path I took, it was all leading to this. That sounds exhausting. It's necessary. Necessary isn't the same as good. He smiled, barely, just a slight curve of his mouth. You say what you think. I'm not used to that. Sorry. Don't be. It's refreshing. We finished breakfast in relative peace. Dante told me about his schedule for the week, meetings, conference calls, a business dinner on Thursday I'd need to attend. I told him about a commission I'd gotten, a mural for a restaurant in Williamsburg. It wasn't comfortable, but it was progress. Over the next 2 weeks, we fell into something resembling a routine. Breakfast together every morning, dinner 3 or 4 nights a week when Dante's schedule allowed. He asked about my art. I asked about his work. We learned each other's rhythms, preferences, pet peeves. I learned that Dante took his coffee black, hated small talk, and had read every book in his library at least twice. That he played piano. I'd heard him late one night, something melancholy and beautiful drifting up from the music room. That he visited his grandfather's grave every Sunday, though he never said what he did there. He learned that I was messy, stayed up too late painting, and had a weakness for terrible reality TV. That I talked to my father twice a week and lied every time he asked if I was happy. That I missed my old life more than I'd expected. The freedom, the chaos, the lack of expectations. And slowly, carefully, we started to build something that looked like a friendship, or at least a functional partnership. The night before my first fertility appointment, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, anxiety coiling in my stomach. Tomorrow, they'd inject me with hormones. Next week, they'd extract eggs. The week after that, they'd attempt the procedure that might result in a child. Dante's child. A baby I'd carry for 9 months and then hand over like a package. I got up, pulled on a robe, and wandered downstairs without really thinking about where I was going. The house was dark, except for a light coming from under Dante's study door. I knocked. No answer. I pushed the door open anyway. Dante was asleep at his desk, his head pillowed on his arms, papers scattered around him. In sleep, his face had lost that hard edge. He looked younger, almost peaceful. I should have left. Instead, I found myself moving closer, studying him in the dim light. There was that scar on his cheekbone, another on his left hand I'd never noticed. What kind of life left marks like that? His eyes opened. For a second, he looked disoriented. Then he saw me and sat up quickly. "Lena, what?" He glanced at his watch. "It's 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. "So you broke into my study?" "The door was unlocked. That's not breaking in." I gestured to the papers. "Working late?" "Trying to." He rubbed his eyes. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." I sat in the chair across from his desk. "Tomorrow's the appointment." Understanding crossed his face. "Right. The fertility clinic." "Yeah. Are you nervous?" "Terrified," I admitted. "Which is stupid, because it's just hormones and a procedure and—" "It's not stupid." He leaned back in his chair. "You're about to do something irreversible, something that's going to change your body, your life. That's terrifying." "You say that like you understand." "I do. Every major decision I've made has been terrifying. I just don't show it." "Why not?" "Because showing fear is showing weakness. And in my world, weakness gets you destroyed." I thought about that. About the pressure he must be under constantly. About the fact that even this marriage, even this child we were planning, was just another chess move in a game he'd been playing his whole life. "Do you ever get tired?" I asked quietly, "of always being in control?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Every day." "So why keep doing it?" "Because the alternative is worse. Letting go means losing everything, becoming like my father, weak, ineffective, forgotten. I can't—" He stopped himself. "I won't let that happen." "Your father?" "He died when I was 16. Heart attack, they said. But really it was the stress of trying to live up to my grandfather's expectations and failing. He wasn't strong enough. I promised myself I would be." There was pain in his voice, carefully controlled but unmistakable. I wanted to reach across the desk, take his hand, offer some kind of comfort, but I didn't know if he'd accept it. "I'm sorry," I said instead. "Don't be. It taught me an important lesson. Emotions are liabilities. Control is survival." "That's a hell of a way to live." "It's the way I live." He met my eyes. "Tomorrow, at the clinic, if you change your mind, if this is too much, you can stop. We'll find another way." "There is no other way. The contract, screw the contract. I'm not going to force you to do something you don't want to do." I stared at him, shocked. "But the company—" "I'll figure something out. I always do." He stood, moved around the desk until he was standing in front of me. "I need you to understand something. This arrangement, this marriage, it's business. But you're not property. You're not an asset. If you want out, tell me. We'll end this." "And my father's debt?" "Already forgiven. That was the deal. Even if you walk away tomorrow, he's safe." I stood too, looking up at him in the dim light of his study. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm realizing that this situation, what I've asked you to do, it's not fair, it's not right. And maybe I'm not as okay with that as I thought I was." For a moment, we just stood there, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the exhaustion in his eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I'm not backing out," I said finally. "I made a commitment. I'm seeing it through." Even though it scares you? Especially because it scares me. Running away from hard things is what my father does. I'm not him. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Respect, maybe, or understanding. Okay, he said quietly. Then we do this together. You're not alone in this, Lena, whatever happens. Thank you. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were warm against my skin. Go to bed, he said. You need sleep. What about you? I'll be up a while longer. I have calls to make in the morning. I nodded and turned to leave. At the door, I looked back. He was still standing there, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Dante? Yes? For what it's worth, I don't think you're weak. I think you're the strongest person I've ever met. I left before he could respond, but I heard it anyway. A quiet exhale that might have been surprise, might have been something else entirely. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I realized something that should have terrified me, but somehow didn't. Somewhere in the past 2 weeks, Dante Moretti had stopped being just a name on a contract. He'd become real to me, human, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. The fertility clinic was in Midtown, tucked into a building so nondescript I walked past it twice before finding the entrance. Dante had offered to come with me, but I'd refused. Some humiliations were better endured alone. The waiting room was full of couples holding hands, whispering encouragement to each other. Real couples. People who actually loved each other and wanted to build a family together. I sat by myself with the magazine I wasn't reading and tried not to think about how different my situation was. Mrs. Moretti? A nurse appeared in the doorway. We're ready for you. The appointment was exactly as clinical as I'd feared. Blood work, ultrasound, a doctor who explained the hormone protocol like she was reading from a script. I'd start injections tonight. Come back in a week for monitoring. If everything looked good, they'd schedule the procedure. Any questions? The doctor asked. About 1,000, but none she could answer. No, I said. I'm good. I left with a bag full of syringes and medication and instructions I barely absorbed. Outside, the city was loud and bright and utterly indifferent to the fact that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. My phone buzzed. Dante. How did it go? Fine. Starting injections tonight. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Do you need help with them? The thought of Dante watching me inject fertility hormones into my stomach was mortifying enough to make me laugh out loud. A woman walking past gave me a strange look. I can manage, I typed back. Let me know if you change your mind. I took a cab back to the townhouse instead of the subway. Wasted money I would have judged myself for a month ago, but now it barely registered. That was what this marriage was doing to me, making me careless with things that used to matter. Eleanor was in the kitchen when I got home, preparing dinner. She took one look at my face and poured me a glass of wine without asking. Rough day? She said. You could say that. Mr. Moretti called. He's going to be late tonight. Meeting ran over. Of course it did. She set the wine in front of me. He worries about you, you know, more than he lets on. He worries about his investment? Is that what you think you are? I took a long drink. That's what the contract says. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, chopping vegetables with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. I've known Dante since he was 28 years old. I've seen him with colleagues, with family, with the women he dated. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. And how's that? Like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve. Like you're something that might actually matter. She glanced at me. Whether he admits it or not. He doesn't do emotions. He told me that himself. Men like Dante don't know how to do emotions. That doesn't mean they don't feel them. She scooped the vegetables into a pan. Give him time. He's trying. I thought about that while I ate dinner alone. Again. And later when I was in my bathroom staring at the first syringe. The nurse had made it look easy. Pinch the skin. Insert the needle at a 45-degree angle. Push the plunger slowly. My hands were shaking too much to do any of that. I tried 3 times. On the 4th attempt, I actually got the needle in, but I couldn't make myself push the plunger. My stomach was already bruising from the failed attempts, and the whole thing felt so clinical, so wrong. A knock on my door made me jump. Lena? Dante's voice. Are you all right? Fine, I'm fine. You don't sound fine. Just give me a minute. Silence. Then, I'm coming in. No, don't. The door opened. Dante stood there still in his work clothes, looking tired and concerned and completely out of place in my bathroom doorway. His eyes went to the syringe in my hand, the bruises on my stomach, my face, which I'm sure showed every bit of frustration I was feeling. How long have you been trying? He asked quietly. An hour. Maybe more. I can't. My voice cracked. I can't do it. He moved closer, slowly, like I was something that might bolt. May I? I should have said no, should have maintained the distance, the professionalism. Instead, I handed him the syringe. He took it, examined it briefly, then looked at me. Sit on the edge of the tub. I sat. He knelt in front of me, Dante Moretti in a $3,000 suit, kneeling on my bathroom floor, and gently took my hand. The trick, he said, is to do it quickly. Don't think about it. Just act. His fingers were warm against my wrist. My father was diabetic. Before he died, I used to help him with his insulin when his hand shook too much. It's similar. I didn't know that. Most people don't. He picked up an alcohol wipe. This is going to be cold. He cleaned a spot on my stomach, his touch clinical but not unkind. Then he picked up the syringe again. Ready? He asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He pinched the skin, inserted the needle in one smooth motion, and pushed the plunger. I barely felt it. 2 seconds later, it was done. There, he said, disposing of the syringe in the sharps container. See? Not so terrible. You made it look easy. Practice. He stood, offering me his hand. I took it, letting him pull me to my feet. We stood there in my bathroom, too close, his hand still holding mine. Thank you, I said. You're welcome. He didn't let go. Tomorrow night, same time, I'll help you again. You don't have to. You won't? I know. I want to. His gray eyes held mine. We're in this together, remember? Whatever happens. The injections became part of our routine. Every night at 9, Dante would appear at my door with the medication kit. We'd go through the process, quick, efficient, almost intimate in its peculiarity. And afterward, we'd talk. About his day, my painting, the family gossip Eleanor had shared. Sometimes he stayed for an hour, sometimes until midnight, sitting in the chair by my window while I painted, and we argued about art versus commerce, tradition versus innovation, whether control was strength or just another form of fear. You're changing, I told him one night, about a week into the hormone treatments. You're not as cold as you pretend to be. I'm not changing. You're just seeing more of me. Is there a difference? He considered that. Maybe not. The hormones made me emotional. I cried at insurance commercials, snapped at Eleanor over nothing, and apologized immediately. Ate an entire pint of ice cream at 2 a.m. and found Dante in the kitchen doing the same thing. Rough night? I asked, sitting across from him with my own pint. Couldn't sleep. You? Hormones. Everything feels too big right now. He nodded like he understood. When my father died, I didn't cry at the funeral. Everyone expected me to, but I couldn't. My grandfather pulled me aside after and told me that was good, that Moretti men don't show weakness. That's toxic as hell. Yes, but it's what I learned. He took a bite of ice cream. 2 weeks later, I was alone in my room and I found one of his ties. And I completely broke down, sobbed for an hour. The next morning, I buried that tie in the back of my closet and never looked at it again. I set down my spoon. Dante. The point is, I get it. Feeling too much, wanting to control it and failing. It's okay to fall apart sometimes. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've never let yourself fall apart again. No, he admitted. I haven't. Maybe I should have. It's not too late. He smiled, sad and distant. Yes, it is. I built walls for a reason, Lena. Taking them down now would destroy everything I've constructed. Or it might set you free. I don't know how to be free. We finished our ice cream in silence. When I stood to go back to bed, he caught my hand. For what it's worth, he said, I'm glad you're here. Even if this situation is insane, and we probably shouldn't have agreed to any of it, I'm glad it's you. I squeezed his hand. Me too. The procedure was scheduled for a Thursday. They'd extracted my eggs the week before, an uncomfortable process that left me cramping and exhausted. Dante had canceled all his meetings that day and stayed home, bringing me tea and painkillers and sitting with me while I watched terrible TV and complained about everything. "You're being nice," I'd said. "It's unsettling. I can go back to being cold and distant if you prefer." "Don't you dare." Now, sitting in the clinic waiting room with him beside me, I was grateful for the shift in our relationship, for the fact that he was here, that I wasn't alone. "Mrs. Moretti?" The nurse smiled. "We're ready for you. Mr. Moretti, you can wait here or—" "I'm coming with her," Dante said. "Oh." The nurse looked flustered. "That's unusual, but if you're both comfortable—" "We are," I said, even though my heart was pounding. The procedure room was cold and sterile. Dante stood by my head while the doctor worked, his hand on my shoulder, steady and warm. I focused on his breathing, used it to calm my own. It was over in 10 minutes. Quick, clinical, exactly as promised. "All done," the doctor said. "You'll need to rest for the remainder of the day. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. We'll do a blood test in 2 weeks to confirm pregnancy." 2 weeks. 14 days to find out if this had worked, if I was carrying Dante's child. In the car on the way home, neither of us spoke. Dante kept his hand on mine, his thumb tracing small circles on my wrist. When we pulled up to the townhouse, he helped me out like I was fragile. "I'm not broken," I said. "I know, but humor me." Eleanor had prepared soup and crackers, left them in my room with a note saying to call if I needed anything. Dante helped me upstairs, settled me into bed with pillows and blankets and the TV remote. "I should get back to work," he said, but he didn't move. "Stay," I said, "just for a little while." He sat in the chair by the window, his usual spot now. "What do you want to watch?" "Something stupid. Nothing that requires thinking." We ended up watching 3 episodes of a baking competition show. Dante got surprisingly invested, arguing about the technical challenges and critiquing the judges' decisions. I fell asleep somewhere during episode 2 and woke up to find him still there, his laptop open, working quietly while I slept. "You didn't have to stay," I murmured. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm okay." I shifted in bed, making room. "Come here." He looked uncertain. "Lena?" "Not like that, just, I don't want to be alone right now." He closed his laptop and moved to sit on the edge of the bed, not touching me, maintaining careful distance, but present. "When do we find out?" I asked. 2 weeks. Blood test." "What if it didn't work?" "Then we try again." "And if it never works?" "Then we figure out something else. We always do." He looked at me. "Are you scared?" "Terrified. Are you?" "Yes." The honesty surprised me. Dante never admitted fear, never showed uncertainty. "We really did this," I said. "We're actually trying to have a baby." "Yes. That's insane." "Completely." I laughed, slightly hysterical. "What are we doing, Dante?" "Surviving, same as always." He reached over and tucked the blanket around me. "Get some rest. I'll check on you later." "You're leaving?" "I have a conference call in 20 minutes, but I'll come back after, I promise." He kept his word. I drifted in and out of sleep all afternoon, and every time I woke up, there was evidence of his presence. Fresh water on my nightstand, the curtains adjusted to block the afternoon sun. A sandwich from my favorite deli that he must have sent Lorenzo to get. That evening, he appeared with dinner on a tray, soup, bread, salad. We ate together in my room, talking about nothing important, and it felt almost normal, almost like a real marriage. "Thank you," I said when he collected the dishes. "For today. For all of this." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You could have just dropped me off and gone back to work, but you stayed. You took care of me. That's what husbands do." "Fake husbands in business arrangements?" He paused in the doorway. "Is that what we are?" I didn't know how to answer that. 2 months ago? Absolutely. Now, after breakfast conversations and late-night talks, and his hands gentle on my skin while he helped with injections? I wasn't sure anymore. I don't know, I admitted. Neither do I. He looked at me for a long moment. Rest well, Lena. The 2-week wait was torture. Every day felt like a year. I threw myself into painting, finishing the Williamsburg mural, and starting 2 new commissions. Dante worked his usual insane hours, but made time for dinner most nights, for our morning coffee routine, for checking in on me with a frequency that would have seemed obsessive if it wasn't also kind of sweet. You're hovering, I told him one morning. I'm being attentive. You texted me 4 times yesterday, asking how I was feeling. And how were you feeling? Fine. Same as the other 3 times you asked. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I just want to make sure. I know, and it's sweet, but I'm not dying. I'm just possibly pregnant. The word hung between us. Pregnant. It still didn't feel real. On day 12, Dante had to fly to Chicago for a business meeting. He tried to reschedule it 3 times before I finally told him to go. The blood test isn't until Friday, I said. You'll be back by then. It's fine. What if you need something? Then I'll call Eleanor or Lorenzo or one of the other 5 people you've assigned to watch over me. I haven't assigned. Dante, go. Make your deal. Save your company. I'll be here when you get back. He left reluctantly, calling me from the airport, from the hotel, from his meeting to make sure I was okay. It was excessive and unnecessary and made something warm bloom in my chest every time. Thursday night, alone in the townhouse except for Eleanor, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow was the test. Tomorrow I'd find out if this had worked, if I was carrying a child, if the next 9 months of my life were about to take a turn I still wasn't sure I was ready for. I wandered down to Dante's study, a habit I'd developed over the past weeks. When I couldn't sleep, I'd sit in his chair and look at his books and try to understand the man who lived in this space. Tonight, I noticed something I'd missed before. A photograph on one of the shelves, partially hidden behind other books. I pulled it out carefully. It showed a young boy, maybe 8 or 9, standing between 2 adults. The man had Dante's eyes. The woman was beautiful, dark-haired, smiling. And the boy was clearly Dante, though his expression was open in a way I'd never seen. Happy, unguarded. That was taken about 6 months before my mother left. I spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, still in his coat, looking exhausted. You're back early, I said. I couldn't stay away. He moved into the room, took the photograph from my hands. She left when I was 9, ran off with someone younger, richer, more exciting than my father. We never saw her again. Dante, I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me another important lesson. People leave. Attachment is dangerous. Better to keep everyone at a distance. He set the photo down. My grandfather used to say she was weak, that she chose her own happiness over family duty. He made sure I understood that was the worst thing a person could do. He was wrong. Was he? She abandoned her child, her husband, everything that was supposed to matter. She was unhappy, trapped in a life she didn't choose. Maybe leaving was the only way she knew how to survive. He looked at me sharply. Are you defending her? No, what she did was terrible. But I understand the impulse. To run from something that's crushing you, even if it means hurting people in the process. Is that how you feel? Crushed? Sometimes? Don't you? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, every day of my life. I moved closer to him, close enough to see the exhaustion in his face, the weight he carried. You don't have to be what your grandfather wanted. You don't have to keep proving you're strong enough. You already are. You don't understand. If I let my guard down, if I show weakness... What? Marco takes the company? Your family judges you? Dante? They already judge you. They already doubt you. Pretending not to care isn't protecting you. It's just making you lonely. And what would you suggest I do instead? Let someone in. Trust someone. Let yourself actually feel something for once instead of treating every relationship like a transaction. I tried that once, with Sophia. It didn't end well. Because you didn't actually try. You just went through the motions and expected her to accept half of you. I put my hand on his chest, felt his heart beating fast beneath my palm. I'm not asking for romance. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm just asking you to be honest. With me. With yourself. And if I can't, then we keep pretending, keep playing our roles, keep living in this beautiful house like strangers who happen to share a last name. I dropped my hand. But I think you're capable of more than that. I think underneath all that control, there's someone who actually wants to connect, who's tired of being alone. He caught my hand before I could step away. You see too much, or you don't hide as well as you think. We stood there in his study, his hand warm around mine, the space between us charged with something I didn't have words for. Not attraction, though there was some of that, I could admit it now, but something deeper. Understanding, maybe. Or the possibility of it. The test is tomorrow, he said quietly. I know. Whatever the result, I know. He pulled me closer, carefully, giving me time to resist. I didn't. Instead, I let him wrap his arms around me, let myself lean against his chest, and breathe in that dark cologne I'd come to associate with safety. I'm terrified, I whispered. Me too. We stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the dim light of his study. Not kissing, not anything sexual, just two people clinging to each other against the unknown. When I finally pulled away, Dante's expression had shifted. The walls weren't completely down, but they'd cracked. I could see the vulnerability underneath, the fear he worked so hard to hide. Get some sleep, he said. I'll drive you to the clinic tomorrow. You don't? I do. We're in this together, remember? I nodded and left him standing there among his books and his carefully constructed defenses. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I realized that somewhere in the past 2 months, this arrangement had stopped being just business. I cared about Dante Moretti. Actually cared about him, his happiness, his pain, his tightly controlled heart that he didn't let anyone see. And that terrified me more than any blood test ever could. The clinic was busy on Friday morning. Dante sat beside me in the waiting room, his hand on my knee, steady and grounding. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say. They took my blood quickly, efficiently, 2 vials that would determine the next year of my life. Results will be ready in about 2 hours, the nurse said. We'll call you. 2 hours. We went to a coffee shop nearby, ordered drinks neither of us touched, and waited. Dante's phone rang constantly, work calls he ignored, messages he didn't read. His attention was entirely on me. What if it's negative? I asked. Then we try again next month. And if it's positive? Then everything changes. Are you ready for that? He looked at me, really looked at me. Are you? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The clinic. My hand shook so badly, Dante had to take it from me and put it on speaker. Mrs. Moretti? The nurse's voice was warm. Congratulations, you're pregnant. The world tilted. Dante's hand tightened on mine. Are you sure? I managed. Absolutely. Your HCG levels are excellent. We'll want to schedule your first ultrasound in about 3 weeks. Congratulations to you both. She gave us instructions I didn't hear. Dante thanked her and ended the call. Then we just sat there, staring at each other across the coffee shop table. We did it, I whispered. Yes. I'm pregnant. Yes. With your baby. Yes. His voice was strained. How do you feel? Honestly, I had no idea. Terrified, exhilarated, trapped, free. Everything at once and nothing I could name. Ask me again in 9 months, I said. He laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him. Then he stood, pulled me to my feet, and kissed my forehead. Not my lips. My forehead, gentle and reverent and completely unexpected. We're going to be parents, he said against my skin. And for better or worse, that was the truth neither of us could escape anymore. The pregnancy changed everything and nothing all at once. Dante became insufferable within 24 hours of the positive test. He hired a private nutritionist who showed up at the house with meal plans and lectures about prenatal vitamins. He had the entire townhouse deep cleaned with non-toxic products. He even tried to convince me to stop painting because of the fumes, until I threatened to move back to my Brooklyn apartment. You're being ridiculous, I told him over breakfast 3 days after the test. I'm being cautious. You're being controlling. It's my child. It's my body. I set down my fork hard enough to make him flinch. I'm not giving up my art. I'm not stopping my life. I'm pregnant, not dying. The doctor said, The doctor said to avoid prolonged exposure to oil paint fumes. I work in acrylics mostly anyway, and I ventilate my studio. I'm being careful. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he picked up his coffee cup, gripping it so tight his knuckles went white. I just want to make sure you're safe. I know, but you can't control everything, Dante. Not this time. I can try. And he did. For the next 2 weeks, he hovered, asked how I was feeling every few hours, canceled meetings to be home for dinner, even started working from his study more often so he could check on me. It should have been annoying. Mostly, it was kind of endearing in a completely dysfunctional way. He's nesting, Eleanor told me one afternoon while I was raiding the kitchen for the 3rd time that day. Pregnancy cravings were no joke. I wanted pickles and ice cream and, weirdly, olives at 2 in the morning. Men don't nest. Dante does. He did the same thing when I got sick last year. Hired 3 different doctors, had my apartment cleaned, brought me soup every day until I was better. She handed me a jar of pickles. He cares about people in the only way he knows how, by fixing things. I'm not broken. No, but you're carrying something precious to him. He's terrified of losing it. I thought about that while I ate pickles straight from the jar, classy, and wondered what it meant that Dante was so invested in this pregnancy. Was it just about the inheritance? About meeting his grandfather's conditions? Or was there something more? The first ultrasound was scheduled for week 7. Dante insisted on coming, which I'd expected. What I hadn't expected was for him to hold my hand the entire time, his palm sweaty against mine. Nervous? I whispered while we waited for the technician. No. Liar. He smiled slightly. Terrified. You? Same. The technician was a cheerful woman named Marie who talked through the entire procedure. There's the gestational sac, and there, can you see that flicker? That's the heartbeat. I couldn't breathe. On the screen, barely visible, was a tiny flutter, fast and strong and impossibly real. That's... My voice broke. That's your baby, Marie said. Measuring right on track. Heart rate is 120, which is perfect. Everything looks great. Dante's hand tightened on mine. When I looked at him, his face was completely blank, but his eyes were wet. Can we get copies of the images? He asked, his voice rough. Of course. I'll print them out for you. We left the clinic with 3 grainy black and white photos that barely showed anything and somehow meant everything. In the car, Dante kept looking at them, his expression unreadable. We should tell the family, he said finally, before someone else figures it out. How would they figure it out? Marco has people watching us. He's looking for any sign the marriage is fake. A pregnancy would... He trailed off. Would prove it's real, I finished. Or at least make it harder to contest. Yes. I stared out the window at the city streaming past. When? My grandfather's birthday dinner is next week. The whole family will be there. It's traditional. We gather at the estate, toast his memory, pretend we don't all hate each other. Sounds delightful. It's a nightmare, but it's the perfect opportunity to announce the pregnancy. Very public, very official. And if Marco doesn't believe it, then he can check the medical records himself. This is real, Lena. Legally, medically, undeniably real. Real. The word echoed in my head as we drove home. This baby was real. The heartbeat we'd seen was real. In 7 months, I'd give birth to a child that would tie me to Dante Moretti forever, whether our marriage lasted or not. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it made me reach over and take his hand. He looked at me, surprised. We're really doing this, I said. Yes. I'm glad it's you. His expression softened. Me too. The week before the family dinner, Dante's behavior shifted from hovering to something close to obsessive. He came home early every night, brought me books about pregnancy and parenting that he'd clearly spent hours researching, even started sleeping on the couch in my sitting room because he was worried I'd need something in the night and he wouldn't hear me from his floor. This is insane, I told him on the 3rd night of finding him on my couch. You have a perfectly good bed 1 floor down. I know. So use it. What if you get sick or have cramps or need... Then I'll call you. You're literally a flight of stairs away. He sat up, running his hands through his hair. He was wearing pajama pants and an old t-shirt I'd never seen before, and he looked exhausted. I can't sleep anyway. Every time I close my eyes, I think about all the things that could go wrong. I sat beside him on the couch. Like what? Miscarriage, complications, something happening to you or the baby that I can't prevent. He looked at me. I know I can't control this. I know it's irrational, but the thought of losing either of you, either of us, he caught himself. The baby. Losing the baby. But that wasn't what he'd said. He'd said both of us. Like I mattered too. Like I was more than just the incubator for his heir. Nothing's going to happen, I said, taking his hand. I'm healthy. The baby's healthy. We're going to be fine. You don't know that. No, but worrying yourself into exhaustion won't help. I pulled him to his feet. Come on. Where are we going? My bed. You're sleeping there tonight. Lena, not like that. Just sleeping. Real sleep in a real bed where I can kick you if you start snoring. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he followed me into my bedroom and stood there awkwardly while I climbed under the covers. Well, I said, patting the other side of the bed. I don't bite. This isn't appropriate. Neither is sleeping on my couch every night, but here we are. He hesitated for another moment, then gave in. He climbed into bed beside me, careful to maintain distance, so tense I could practically feel the anxiety radiating off him. Relax, I said. You're going to give yourself a heart attack. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Sleep? Be vulnerable. Let someone take care of me. I've spent 35 years making sure I never needed anyone. I turned on my side to face him. Well, you need someone now. You need sleep. And apparently you need me nearby to get it. So stop fighting it. He turned to face me too. In the dim light from the window, his eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. When did you get so bossy? I've always been bossy. You just weren't paying attention. I'm paying attention now. Something in the way he said it made my breath catch. We were close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, smell the subtle scent of his soap. Close enough to kiss, if either of us were brave enough to close the distance. Neither of us was. Instead, I reached out and took his hand, threading our fingers together. Sleep, Dante. I'll still be here in the morning. Promise? Promise. He closed his eyes. Within minutes, his breathing evened out, his body finally relaxing. I lay there watching him sleep, this complicated man who'd bought my loyalty with a contract and somehow earned my affection through sheer stubborn persistence. I was in so much trouble. The morning sickness hit the next day with a vengeance. I woke up, made it approximately 3 steps toward the bathroom, and barely got there before losing everything I'd eaten the night before. Dante appeared in the doorway within seconds, which meant he'd either been awake or had developed some kind of superhuman hearing. Get out, I gasped between heaves. No. Dante, I'm serious. This is disgusting. I've seen worse. He grabbed a washcloth, wet it with cold water, and knelt beside me. When my father was dying, I took care of him. This is nothing. I wanted to argue, but another wave hit. He held my hair back, rubbed circles on my back, and didn't say a word. When it finally stopped, I slumped against the bathroom wall, utterly miserable. I hate this, I said. I know. It's supposed to get better after the first trimester. So I've read. You've been reading pregnancy books? 5 of them, plus approximately 40 medical journals and 12 parenting blogs. He pressed the cool washcloth to my forehead. The morning sickness should peak around week 9 and then start to improve. Some women find that eating small, frequent meals helps. Others swear by ginger tea or peppermint. You really are a control freak. I prefer thoroughly prepared. I laughed weakly. Thank you. For this. For not running away screaming. Where would I go? You're carrying my child. He helped me to my feet. Come on, back to bed. I'll have Eleanor bring up some crackers and ginger ale. I need to brush my teeth first. Of course. He waited while I made myself marginally human again, then guided me back to bed like I was made of glass. Eleanor appeared within minutes with crackers, ginger ale, and a knowing smile. Mr. Moretti called me in a panic, she said, setting the tray on my nightstand. Said you were dying. I said she was sick, Dante corrected from his position by the window. Not dying. You said, and I quote, Eleanor, come immediately, emergency. He had the grace to look embarrassed. It was an emergency. Morning sickness is normal, sir. Nothing about this feels normal. Eleanor patted his shoulder. First-time father nerves. Perfectly natural. Just try not to drive Lena too crazy. She left before he could respond. I nibbled a cracker, watching him pace. She's right, you know. You're going to drive yourself crazy if you react like this every time I get sick. I'll work on it. Will you? He stopped pacing. Probably not, but I'll try. The morning sickness continued for the next 2 weeks. Some days were better than others. Dante learned to keep crackers and ginger ale stocked in every room. He started waking up before me to check if I needed anything. He even researched acupressure points that were supposed to help with nausea and practiced them on me until I felt well enough to keep food down. You're getting better at this, I told him one morning after a particularly bad episode. At what? Caring for someone. Being present. Not trying to fix everything with money or contracts. Don't praise me for basic human decency. I'll praise you for whatever I want. You're doing a good job, Dante. Better than I expected. He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to touch. I'm terrified I'm going to fail. You, the baby, this whole situation. You're not going to fail? How do you know? Because you care too much. Failing would require not giving a damn, and you very clearly give several damns. That pulled a real smile from him. Several damns. That's quite the endorsement. I'm pregnant and nauseous. It's the best I can do. He leaned down and kissed my forehead, something he'd started doing regularly, a gesture of affection that felt more intimate than anything else. Rest. We have the family dinner tomorrow night. You'll need your strength. Is it going to be as bad as I think? Worse. Marco's been spreading rumors that our marriage is a sham. This pregnancy announcement should shut him up. But he won't go down without a fight. What kind of fight? The kind where he questions the baby's parentage, or suggests we got pregnant before the marriage to trap me, or implies that you're only with me for the money. He stood, his jaw tight. He's going to try to humiliate you, and I need you to know that I won't let that happen. I can handle Marco. I know you can. I've seen you tear him apart before. But tomorrow, let me do it. You're carrying my child. That makes you untouchable. The possessiveness in his voice should have annoyed me. Instead, it sent a warm shiver down my spine. Okay, I said, but if he gets out of line, then you have my permission to eviscerate him. The Moretti estate was in the Hamptons, a sprawling property that looked like it had been airlifted from an Italian villa. We arrived at sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, the ocean visible beyond perfectly manicured gardens. Your grandfather lived here? I asked as Lorenzo drove up the long driveway. Part-time. He had houses in Manhattan, Sicily, and Miami. This was his favorite. Dante looked out at the property with an expression I couldn't read. I inherited it along with everything else. I haven't been back since the funeral. Why not? Too many memories, most of them bad. The main house was even more impressive inside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. Family members were already gathering in the main salon, drinks in hand, voices echoing off the high ceilings. Everyone stopped talking when we entered. Cecilia materialized immediately, air-kissing Dante's cheeks. Darling, so good of you to come. And Lena. Her smile was sharp. Still married, I see. 4 months and counting, I said sweetly. How time flies. She lowered her voice. Marco's been saying the most interesting things about you two. I do hope there won't be any unpleasantness tonight. That depends on Marco, Dante said coldly. Where is he? Terrace, holding court as usual. Cecilia drifted away, leaving us to navigate the crowd alone. We made our way through the room, Dante's hand on the small of my back, possessive and protective. People watched us with barely concealed curiosity. I caught whispered conversations that stopped when we got too close. Marco was exactly where Cecilia said, surrounded by cousins and hangers-on, a glass of scotch in his hand. He saw us coming and smiled. Dante. Lena. What a surprise to see you both here. It's grandfather's birthday dinner, Dante said. Why wouldn't we be here? Oh, I just thought you'd be too busy with your new marriage to bother with family obligations. But I suppose when the marriage is just for show, it's easy to make time. Several people gasped. Dante went very still beside me. Careful, Marco, he said quietly. Careful of what? The truth? Everyone knows this marriage is a joke, a desperate attempt to meet grandfather's conditions and keep the company. The marriage is legal and binding. Legal, sure, but real? Please. Marco's eyes slid to me. Tell me, Lena, how much did he pay you? It must have been a fortune to convince someone like you to marry into this family. That's enough, Dante said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Is it? Because I have questions. We all do. Like why the sudden rush to get married? Why no real courtship or engagement? Why none of us had even heard of her until the day you announced, "I'm pregnant"? The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. The terrace went silent. Every eye turned to me. What did you say? Marco's smile had frozen on his face. I said I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks, which answers all your pathetic questions about why we got married. I stepped forward, drawing myself up to my full height, which still left me a solid 6 inches shorter than him, but I'd learned that presence mattered more than size. You want to know why Dante married me? Because I'm carrying his child. Because unlike you, he actually wants to build something instead of stealing what other people created. That's convenient timing, Marco said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Is it? We've been together for months. The pregnancy is documented by some of the best doctors in the city. If you don't believe me, I'm happy to provide medical records. Or you can call the fertility clinic yourself. I moved closer, close enough to see the uncertainty in his eyes. But here's what I think is really happening. I think you're terrified. Terrified that Dante's actually going to meet the conditions of the will. Terrified that all your plotting and scheming isn't going to matter. Terrified that you're going to lose. You don't know anything about... I know you're a coward who tears down other people because you can't build anything yourself. I know you've spent your whole life in Dante's shadow and you're bitter about it. And I know that in about 7 months, when I give birth to Dante's child, you're going to have to accept that you lost. Again. The silence was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Dante's arm slid around my waist, pulling me against his side. My wife asked you a question, Marco. Do you need to see the medical records? Or are you done embarrassing yourself? Marco's face had gone red. This doesn't prove anything. You could have gotten pregnant just to... To what? Secure my husband's inheritance? That's literally the point of grandfather's will, to ensure the next generation. I felt Dante's hand tighten on my hip. We're having a baby. Whether you like it or not. Whether you believe it or not. It's happening. So you can either accept it gracefully or you can keep making a fool of yourself. Your choice. For a long moment, I thought Marco was going to lose it completely. His hands had curled into fists, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite spit out. Then Cecilia appeared with a glass of champagne raised high. A toast, she announced, her voice cutting through the tension. To Dante and Lena, and to the next generation of Morettis. The gathered family members scrambled for glasses. The moment broke. Marco turned and walked away, his shoulders rigid with fury. Well, Cecilia said to me quietly, that was quite the performance. It wasn't a performance, it's the truth. Oh, I believe you, dear. Marco's just not used to losing. He'll adjust. Eventually. She clinked her glass against mine, which was sparkling cider, since I couldn't drink. Congratulations, truly. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and thinly veiled curiosity. Sophia cornered me in the bathroom to ask if the pregnancy was planned. Other cousins wanted to know due dates and gender preferences and whether we'd move to a bigger house. I answered automatically, my mind still on the confrontation with Marco. On the way, Dante had stood beside me, solid and unwavering, on the possessive grip he'd kept on my waist all night, like he was afraid someone might try to take me away. We left as soon as we could politely escape. In the car, Dante was silent, staring out the window at the dark landscape streaming past. Are you angry? I finally asked. No. You seem angry. I'm furious, but not at you. He turned to face me. Marco had no right to speak to you that way. To question you, to imply, it doesn't matter. It does matter. You're my wife. You're carrying my child. That makes you family. And no one gets to treat my family like that. The protectiveness in his voice made my chest tight. You called me family. You are family. Legally, yes, but also... He stopped himself. Also what? Also in ways that have nothing to do with the contract. He reached over and took my hand. You stood up for me tonight, for us. You didn't have to. You could have stayed quiet and let me handle Marco, but you fought back. Of course I did. He was being an ass. You defended me, he said again, like he couldn't quite believe it. People don't usually do that. Then people are idiots. I squeezed his hand. You're my husband. Fake or not, contract or not, I'm not going to let anyone talk about you like that. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, it's not fake anymore, is it? This marriage, whatever it started as, it's become something else. My heart was pounding. What has it become? I don't know. But I know I care about you, more than I should, more than I planned to. He brought my hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to my knuckles. You've complicated everything, Lena Carter Moretti. Good. You needed complicating. He laughed, soft and genuine. Yes, I suppose I did. We drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, his hand still holding mine. When we arrived at the townhouse, he helped me out of the car like I was precious cargo. Are you going to sleep on my couch again tonight? I asked as we climbed the stairs. If you'll let me. Or you could just sleep in my bed, like last time. He stopped on the landing. Lena, I sleep better when you're there. I think you do too. I continued up the stairs, not looking back. No pressure, but the offer stands. I heard him follow me. In my room, I changed into pajamas while he waited, then climbed into bed. He stood in the doorway, uncertainty written all over his face. Come here, I said. He came, climbed into bed beside me, careful and gentle. I turned off the light and settled against my pillows. Thank you, he said in the darkness. For what? For tonight, for defending me, for being here. A pause. For not giving up on me when I gave you every reason to. I reached out, found his hand, held it. I'm not giving up on you, Dante, or on this, whatever this is becoming. Neither am I. We fell asleep like that, hands linked in the darkness. Two people who'd started as strangers bound by contract and somehow become something infinitely more complicated and terrifying and real. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, Dante's arm was around me, holding me close, like even in sleep he was afraid to let go. The weeks after the family dinner shifted something fundamental between us. Dante stopped pretending to sleep on the couch and just came straight to my bed every night. We didn't talk about it, didn't analyze what it meant. We just existed in this strange new normal where we fell asleep holding hands and woke up tangled together. The morning sickness finally eased around week 12, replaced by an energy I hadn't felt in months. I threw myself back into painting with a vengeance, finishing commissions and starting new pieces that felt more honest than anything I'd created in years. Dante noticed. Your work is changing, he said one evening, standing in my studio doorway watching me paint. How so? It's less controlled, more raw. He moved closer, studying the canvas. Before you were always holding something back. Now you're not. Maybe I don't feel like I have to protect myself anymore. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Do you feel safe? Here? With me? Yes. Surprisingly, terrifyingly, yes. Good. He kissed the top of my head, another gesture that had become routine. That's all I want. For you to be safe. But safe was about to become a relative term. Marco didn't take his defeat at the family dinner well. Over the next month, he launched a campaign of subtle sabotage. Rumors started circulating in business circles that Dante's marriage was a fraud. Anonymous tips were sent to gossip columnists suggesting the pregnancy was fake. Someone even hired a private investigator to dig into my background, looking for dirt that didn't exist. He's desperate, Dante said one night, reading through yet another report from his lawyers. The pregnancy announcement should have ended this, but he's refusing to accept it. What can he actually do? Contest the will, claim the marriage wasn't legitimate, try to prove we conceived before the wedding to deliberately meet the terms. He tossed the papers aside. None of it will work. The facts are on our side, but he can make things difficult. How difficult? Difficult enough that we might need to prove the marriage is real in ways that go beyond medical records. I sat up in bed. What does that mean? It means Marco's lawyers might push for depositions, questions about our relationship, our living arrangements, our level of intimacy. He wouldn't meet my eyes. They might argue that a marriage without consummation isn't legally binding. My stomach dropped. But we can't. The contract says, I know what the contract says, and I'm not suggesting we change that. I'm just warning you that Marco might try to use it against us. So what do? We keep living our lives. We keep being seen together, and we wait for him to make his next move. The next move came 2 weeks later at Dante's 36th birthday party. I hadn't wanted to throw him a party. Dante didn't do celebrations, but Cecilia had insisted, claiming it was tradition, and I'd learned that fighting Moretti family traditions was an exercise in futility. So we hosted a party at the townhouse. 200 people crammed into the first floor, champagne flowing, jazz band playing in the music room. I wore a black dress that accommodated my barely there baby bump and spent the evening smiling at people whose names I'd never remember. Dante stayed close all night, his hand always on me somewhere. My back, my waist, my shoulder. Protective and possessive in equal measure. You hate this, I murmured during a rare moment alone. Completely. We could sneak upstairs, hide in your study until everyone leaves. Tempting, but Cecilia would hunt us down. He pulled me closer. Besides, I don't entirely hate it. You're here. That makes it tolerable. Sweet talker. I'm trying. Is it working? Maybe. He was about to kiss me, right there in the middle of his birthday party, when Marco's voice cut through the music. Speech! The birthday boy should make a speech! The crowd took up the chant. Dante's jaw tightened, but he moved to the center of the room, pulling me with him. Thank you all for coming, he said, his voice carrying easily. My grandfather always said birthdays were a time to reflect on what matters. Family, legacy, the future we're building. And what future is that? Marco called out. He'd clearly been drinking, his face flushed, his words slightly slurred. The one where you manipulate your way into keeping the company? The one where you marry some nobody and knock her up just to meet grandfather's conditions? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dante went very still beside me. Marco, Cecilia warned, this isn't the time. No, I think it's the perfect time. Marco pushed through the crowd until he was standing in front of us. Everyone here knows this marriage is a sham. Everyone knows that baby, he gestured at me, is just a convenient solution to a problem. Tell me, Dante, do you even love her, or is she just another business transaction? The room was silent, every eye on us, waiting. Dante's hand tightened on mine. You're drunk. I'm honest. Which is more than I can say for you. Marco turned to address the crowd. This whole thing is a fraud. The marriage, the pregnancy, all of it. And I'm going to prove it. How? I asked, my voice cutting through his rant. How are you going to prove something that isn't true? I have evidence. Testimony from people who knew you before, who know you were broke, desperate, who know you sold yourself to my cousin for money. That's enough, Dante said, his voice deadly quiet. Is it? Because I'm just getting started. I know about the contract, Dante. I know you paid her. I know this marriage has an expiration date. My blood went cold. How do you? I have my sources. And once I submit this evidence to the probate court, they'll invalidate the marriage. You'll lose everything. Dante moved so fast I barely saw it. 1 second he was beside me. The next, he had Marco by the collar, shoving him against the wall. You broke into my files, Dante said, his voice low and dangerous. You stole confidential documents. I did what was necessary to protect the family. You committed a felony. Dante's fist connected with Marco's jaw. A solid crack that made several women scream. Marco went down hard, blood streaming from his lip. Dante! I grabbed his arm before he could hit him again. Stop! He's not worth it. He's trying to destroy us. And you're playing right into his hands. I pulled him back, putting myself between them. Look around. Everyone's watching. Everyone's recording this on their phones. If you beat him up at your own birthday party, you're the one who looks unhinged. Dante was breathing hard, his fists still clenched, but he stepped back. Marco struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. You see? Violent, unstable, exactly the kind of man who shouldn't be running the family business. Get out, Dante said. This is your house. You can't. I can, and I am. Get out before I have Lorenzo throw you out. Lorenzo appeared as if summoned, his expression grim. Mr. Marco, time to leave. Marco let himself be escorted out, but not before throwing one last look over his shoulder. This isn't over, cousin. Not even close. The party dissolved after that. People made excuses and fled, uncomfortable with the family drama they'd witnessed. Within an hour, the house was empty except for Eleanor, who was quietly directing the catering staff in cleanup. Dante was in his study, pacing like a caged animal. I found him there, still in his party clothes, a glass of scotch in his hand. He has the contract, I said. I know. How did he get it? Someone in my office. Someone on his payroll. Dante drained the scotch. I'll find out who. But it doesn't matter now. The damage is done. What happens next? Marco submits the contract to the court. They review it. They might decide the marriage was entered into under false pretenses, that it's not legitimate under the terms of the will. And we lose everything. I lose everything. You get your settlement. That was in the contract, too. I moved closer to him. I don't want the settlement. Lena, I don't want it. I don't want any of this if it means you lose the company your grandfather built. If it means Marco wins. There's nothing we can do. The contract is evidence that this marriage was transactional, that we planned it specifically to meet the will's conditions. No court is going to accept that as legitimate. Then we make it legitimate. He looked at me. How? We stop pretending. We stop holding back. We admit that somewhere along the way, this stopped being about the contract and became real. Lena, you don't have to. I'm not doing this out of obligation. I'm doing it because it's true. I took his hands. I care about you, Dante. More than I should. More than makes sense. This marriage might have started as a business arrangement, but it's not that anymore. At least not for me. His expression was unreadable. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to stay. Not because of the contract, not because of the money. Because I choose you. I choose this, whatever this is. You're pregnant with my child. You might feel obligated. Stop. Stop telling me what I feel. Stop assuming I'm here out of duty or fear or desperation. I stepped closer. I'm here because when I wake up in the middle of the night, the first thing I do is reach for you because you read 5 pregnancy books so you'd know how to take care of me. Because you stood beside me when your family tried to tear me down. Because you're a good man who thinks he has to be made of stone to survive. I don't know how to be anything else. Then let me teach you. I put his hand on my stomach, where our baby was growing. This is real, Dante. The baby is real. What I feel for you is real. The only fake thing here is the walls you're still trying to keep between us. He looked down at his hand on my stomach, then back at my face. I'm terrified. Of what? Of needing you. Of letting myself care and having you leave. Everyone leaves eventually. I'm not everyone. I stood on my toes and kissed him, the first real kiss since our 3-second wedding peck. His lips were soft, hesitant, like he'd forgotten how to do this. Then something broke. His arms came around me, pulling me close, and he kissed me back like I was air, and he'd been drowning. It was desperate and messy and perfect. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I love you, I said. I didn't plan to. Definitely didn't want to. But I do. Lena, you don't have to say it back. I know you're not ready. I just needed you to know. He pressed his forehead to mine. I've spent my entire life avoiding this. Avoiding feeling anything that could be used against me. But you've destroyed every defense I had. And I don't know if I can say the words yet, but I can show you. Then show me. He did. He kissed me again, slower this time, tender. And when he lifted me into his arms and carried me upstairs to his bedroom, not mine, his, I knew we were crossing a line we couldn't uncross. That night, we stopped being business partners and became something infinitely more complicated. He was gentle, careful of the pregnancy, checking constantly to make sure I was okay. And afterward, when we lay tangled in his sheets, his hand on my stomach and my head on his chest, he finally said it. I love you too. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between you defending me to my family and threatening to leave when I was being an ass, I fell completely in love with you. I smiled against his skin. Took you long enough. I'm a slow learner. Lucky for you, I'm patient. No, you're not. Okay, I'm not. But I'm willing to wait for you to catch up. He kissed the top of my head. What do we do about Marco? About the court case? We tell the truth. That yes, this started as a contract, but it became real. We fell in love. That happens, right? People enter into arranged marriages all the time and end up actually caring for each other. The contract has an end date, 1 year. Then we void it. We tear it up and write a new one. One that says we're staying married because we want to, not because we have to. And if the court doesn't believe us, then we fight together, because I'm not letting Marco win. I'm not letting him take away everything you've built. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, there's a hearing in 2 weeks. Marco's lawyers are petitioning to have the will's conditions reviewed. We'll need to testify. Then we testify. We tell them exactly what happened, how we met, why we married, how it changed. We're honest. Honesty isn't always enough. It'll have to be, because it's all we have. The next 2 weeks were a blur of lawyers and depositions and stress that had my doctor worried about the pregnancy. Dante's legal team worked around the clock, building a case that our marriage was legitimate despite its unconventional beginning. The key, Victoria Chen told us, is proving that your feelings for each other are genuine, that this isn't just an act for the court. It's not an act, Dante said, his hand finding mine automatically. I believe you, but we need to make the judge believe you too. She looked between us. I'm going to ask some difficult questions about your relationship, your intimacy, your future plans. You need to be prepared to answer honestly. The questions were brutal. How often did we sleep together? Did we share a bedroom? When did we realize we loved each other? What were our plans after the baby was born? We answered everything. Honestly, completely, holding nothing back. Marco's lawyers tried to twist our words to make it sound like we'd planned everything from the beginning, but they couldn't explain away the medical records, the documented progression of the pregnancy, the witnesses who'd seen us together and testified to the genuine affection between us. The hearing was held in a wood-paneled courtroom that smelled like old books and judgment. Dante wore his best suit. I wore a blue dress that showed my baby bump, 5 months now, impossible to hide. Marco sat on the other side with his lawyers, looking smug. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She listened to Marco's lawyers present their case, the contract, the financial arrangements, the timeline that suggested deliberate manipulation. Then it was our turn. Dante's lawyer called him to the stand first. He explained the will's conditions, his grandfather's demands, the impossible position he'd been put in. And so you married Lena Carter as a business arrangement, Marco's lawyer said on cross-examination, to meet those conditions and keep control of the company. Initially, yes. And you paid her $2.5 million in exchange for 1 year of marriage and a child. That was the agreement. So this marriage was, in fact, a fraud designed to circumvent your grandfather's intentions. No, Dante said firmly. My grandfather wanted me to marry and have a child. I did both. The fact that it started as a contract doesn't make it less legitimate. But you had no intention of staying married beyond the 1 year term, correct? That was the original plan. But plans change. When did they change? Dante looked at me. Gradually, every time she challenged me, every time she refused to let me hide behind my walls, every time she proved she was stronger and braver and better than I deserved. That's very convenient, the lawyer said, falling in love just in time to save your inheritance. I didn't fall in love to save my inheritance. I fell in love because she made it impossible not to. Dante's voice was steady. You want to know when I knew? It was the night she stood up to Marco at the family dinner. When she defended me, even though she had nothing to gain from it. When she proved she was there for me, not for the money. Marco's lawyer tried to poke holes in his testimony, but Dante didn't waver. Every question he answered with the truth. Then they called me. I sat in the witness chair, my hand on my stomach where the baby was doing somersaults, and told our story. The night I'd walked into that restaurant desperate and terrified. The contract I'd signed. The slow, unexpected shift from transaction to something real. You expect us to believe you fell in love with a man who bought your loyalty? Marco's lawyer asked. I expect you to believe that people are complicated, that I can be furious at the situation I was in and still care about the person who offered me a way out. That Dante can be controlling and frustrating and emotionally unavailable, and I can still love him anyway. But the contract was a starting point, not the whole story. I leaned forward. You want to know if this marriage is real? Ask me what Dante's favorite book is, or what he does when he can't sleep, or why he visits his grandfather's grave every Sunday, even though he hated the man. I know these things because I pay attention, because I care, because this isn't an act. And yet you're willing to give up custody of your child in exchange for money. That one hit hard. I took a breath. I was willing to. When I thought this was just business, but that's not what's happening anymore. Dante and I have talked about custody arrangements that actually make sense. Shared parenting, co-decision making. We're building a real family, not following a contract. Marco's lawyer tried a few more questions, but I could see I'd rattled him. The judge was watching me closely, her expression thoughtful. After my testimony, they called Eleanor, then Lorenzo, then, surprisingly, Sophia. I dated Dante for 2 years, Sophia told the court. I thought I knew him, but I never saw him look at me the way he looks at Lena. He's different with her, softer, actually happy. You're saying you believe their marriage is legitimate? Marco's lawyer asked. I'm saying I believe they love each other. Whether that's enough to meet the will's conditions isn't for me to say, but they're real. The testimony took all day. By the time the judge called for a recess, I was exhausted, my back aching, the baby kicking up a storm. Dante helped me stand, his arm around my waist. You did amazing. Did I help or hurt us? You told the truth. That's all we can do. We went home to wait for the judge's decision. It could take days, weeks even. We tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but the stress was crushing. My father called one evening, finally asking questions he should have asked months ago. Are you happy, Lena? Really happy? I looked across the room at Dante, who was working at his laptop, occasionally glancing up to check on me. Yeah, Dad, I really am. He's good to you? He's wonderful to me. Then that's all that matters. If only the court agreed. The decision came on a Thursday morning, 3 days before Dante's deadline to meet the will's conditions. We were called back to the courtroom, both of us dressed like we were going to a funeral. The judge took her seat, looking stern. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case, she began, and I'm prepared to make my ruling. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. The petitioner argues that this marriage was entered into fraudulently, solely to meet the conditions of the deceased's will. The evidence supports that the marriage did begin as a contractual arrangement with financial compensation. Marco smiled. However, the judge continued, the evidence also shows that this marriage has evolved into a legitimate relationship. The medical records confirm a pregnancy conceived during the marriage. Multiple witnesses have testified to the genuine affection between the parties, and both Mr. and Mrs. Moretti have demonstrated a commitment to building a future together. I grabbed Dante's hand. Marriage in this country takes many forms. Arranged marriages, marriages of convenience, second chance marriages. What matters is not how a marriage begins, but the commitment the parties make to each other. In this case, I find that commitment to be genuine. Your Honor, Marco's lawyer objected. The contract clearly states, the contract is a private agreement between consenting adults. It has no bearing on the legal validity of the marriage itself. She looked at Dante. Mr. Moretti, you have met the conditions of your grandfather's will. You are legally married to Lena Carter Moretti. You are expecting a child. The inheritance is yours. The courtroom erupted. Marco was on his feet, shouting objections. His lawyers were scrambling, but the judge's gavel came down hard. This case is dismissed. We're adjourned. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. We'd won. We'd actually won. Dante pulled me into his arms right there in the courtroom, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. We did it, he whispered. You did it. We did it together. He kissed me, deep and desperate and full of relief. Around us, people were congratulating us, but I barely heard them. All I could focus on was Dante and the future we'd just secured. Marco stormed out without a word. I didn't care. He'd lost. We'd won. And for once, the good guys had actually come out ahead. The final reading of the will happened the next week. It was a formality at this point, the court had already ruled, but Dante wanted to see it through properly. We sat in the lawyer's office while the terms were officially read. Control of the company transferred to Dante. The trust funds activated. The properties deeded over. Everything his grandfather had built, now legally, irrevocably his. There's one more provision, the lawyer said. A letter your grandfather left, to be read when the conditions were met. He handed Dante an envelope. Dante opened it with trembling hands. I watched his face as he read, saw emotions flicker across it too fast to name. When he finished, he handed me the letter. The handwriting was spidery but clear. Dante, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You've married. You're building a family. I know you probably hate me for forcing you into this, but I needed to know you wouldn't end up like your father, alone, bitter, dying without anyone who truly cared. I hope whoever you married is strong enough to break through those walls you built. I hope you let her. You deserve happiness, boy, even if you don't believe it. Don't waste the life I'm giving you. Build something real. Someone who actually loves you, not just the empire. I looked up at Dante. His eyes were wet. He wanted you to be happy, I said softly. He had a terrible way of showing it. Yeah, but he wasn't entirely wrong. You needed someone to push you, to force you out of your carefully controlled life. I didn't need force. I needed you. We left the lawyer's office as the undisputed heads of the Moretti family empire. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it just felt like a weightlifting. What do we do now? I asked in the car. Whatever we want. He took my hand. The contract is void. The will is satisfied. We can do whatever we want. I want to stay married to you. He smiled. Good. Because I'm not letting you go. Even though you don't have to anymore? Even though the year is almost up? Especially because I don't have to. Every choice I make from here on out is because I want to. And I choose you. Every day. For as long as you'll have me. That's a long time. I'm counting on it. The baby was born on a cold January morning, 3 weeks early, and screaming loud enough to wake the entire hospital floor. She had Dante's dark hair and my stubborn chin and the most perfect tiny fingers I'd ever seen. She's beautiful, Dante whispered, holding her for the first time. He looked terrified and awed in equal measure. She's ours. Yeah, she really is. We named her Isabella. Not after anyone in particular, just because it felt right. The custody arrangements we'd worried about never materialized. We were a family. Messy, unconventional, but completely real. We moved her crib into our bedroom, took turns with the 3 a.m. feedings, argued over sleep training methods and whether pacifiers were a good idea. My father met her when she was 2 weeks old and cried. You're a mother, he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. I know. Weird, right? You're going to be better at this than I ever was. Probably. But I learned some things from you too. How to be persistent, how to believe in people even when they don't deserve it, how to find beauty in chaos. He hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, Lena. Your mother would be too. Eleanor was Isabella's favorite person besides us. She'd rock her to sleep singing old Italian lullabies and swore the baby smiled at her first. Marco sent a gift, a silver rattle that we immediately donated. We didn't hear from him again. Cecilia visited once, held the baby with surprising tenderness, and told Dante his grandfather would have been proud. Would he? Dante asked me later. I think so. You built something real. That's what he wanted. I built it with you. Yeah, you did. My art took off in unexpected ways. A gallery in Chelsea wanted to show my work. I sold 3 pieces in the first month. The money was nice, but what mattered more was the validation. I was a real artist, not just someone playing at it. Dante cut back on his work hours, delegated more, spent mornings with Isabella and me instead of in conference calls. You're different, I told him one Sunday morning. We were in bed, Isabella sleeping between us, her tiny hand wrapped around Dante's finger. How so? Happier, softer, less like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's what happens when you find people worth keeping. You stop waiting for them to leave. We're not going anywhere. I know. He kissed my forehead, then Isabella's. I finally know. 6 months after Isabella was born, Dante came home early from work with flowers and a nervous expression. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing. I have something for you." He handed me a jewelry box. Inside was a new ring, not the cold white gold band from our contract wedding. This one was rose gold with a small diamond, simple and beautiful. "I married you once because I had to," he said. "I'd like to marry you again because I want to. No contract, no conditions. Just you and me and the life we've built. What do you say?" I was crying, hormones or happiness or both. Yes, obviously yes. We had the ceremony on the roof terrace of the townhouse, just family and close friends. Eleanor officiated. My father walked me down the makeshift aisle. Isabella slept through the entire thing in Sophia's arms. This time, when Dante kissed me, it wasn't for 3 seconds. It was for as long as it took to say everything we'd learned about each other, about love that grows in unexpected places, about choosing each other every day. "I love you," he said against my lips. "I love you too. Always." The Moretti Empire thrived under Dante's leadership. He proved to be exactly what his grandfather had hoped: strong, strategic, but also compassionate in ways the old man never was. He created scholarship programs for kids from neighborhoods like the one I grew up in, funded arts initiatives, gave people chances they wouldn't have had otherwise. "You're changing things," I told him one night. "We're changing things. None of this happens without you. I just paint and take care of our daughter. You do so much more than that. You remind me why it matters. Why building something good is more important than just building something powerful." Isabella grew into a toddler who had both our stubborn streaks and neither of our filters. She told Marco at a family dinner that he had mean eyes. She informed Cecilia that her pearls were boring. She was perfect. On our second anniversary, the real one from our second wedding, Dante surprised me with a studio space in Williamsburg. 3,000 square feet with north-facing windows and room for all my equipment. "You can't afford this," I said, even though I knew he could. "I can afford anything. But this isn't about money. It's about giving you space to create. You've given up so much for me, for us. I wanted to give you something back. You've given me everything." "Not everything, not yet." He got down on one knee in the middle of my new studio. "Dante, we're already married twice." "I know, but we never planned for more than one kid. And I was thinking, if you wanted, maybe we could plan for another one. Not because of a contract or an inheritance, just because we want to." I pulled him to his feet. "Are you asking me to have another baby with you?" "I'm asking if you'd want to. No pressure. We're happy with Isabella, but if you wanted more, I want more. I want everything with you, everything." He kissed me there in the empty studio, in the space he'd given me to be myself, and I thought about how far we'd come. From that desperate night in a restaurant to this moment, from strangers bound by contract to partners bound by choice. We had a second daughter 18 months later, Sophia. She was quieter than Isabella, more contemplative with Dante's gray eyes and my stubbornness about bedtime. My father died when Sophia was 6 months old, peacefully, in his sleep, which was more than he probably deserved, but less than I'd hoped for him. At his funeral, I stood between Dante and my daughters and thought about second chances. My father had wasted most of his, made terrible choices, hurt people he loved, but in the end, he'd given me the thing that saved both our lives. He'd forced me to be brave enough to walk into that restaurant, to make a choice that changed everything. "Thank you, Dad," I whispered, "for being a disaster, for making me strong enough to survive you." Dante squeezed my hand. He understood. He'd spent years resenting his grandfather, but also grudgingly grateful for the push towards something real. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most also give us what we need, not intentionally, not kindly, but the gift is still there if we're willing to see it. Years passed. Isabella started school. Sophia learned to walk, to talk, to argue with her sister. The company grew. My art hung in galleries across the city. Eleanor retired but came back weekly to have tea and spoil the girls. Marco eventually married someone equally bitter and moved to California. We sent a gift. He didn't acknowledge it. That was fine. The townhouse filled with the noise of life, children laughing, music playing, arguments over homework and bedtime. Dante taught Isabella to play piano. I taught Sophia to paint. We fought about discipline and schedules and whose turn it was to handle the 3 a.m. nightmare calls. We were messy and imperfect and completely, utterly real. On our 10th anniversary, Dante took me back to Marea di Sicilia, the restaurant where it all started. "Why here?" I asked. "Because I want to remember who we were, how desperate and broken and lost we both felt." We sat at a table, not the same one but close, and ordered pasta that probably still cost $50 a plate. "If you could go back," I said, "would you do it differently?" "No. Every terrible decision, every moment of pain, it led us here. I wouldn't change that. Even the contract, even the cruelty of how it started, even that. Because it brought me you. It brought me our daughters. It brought me a life I didn't know I could have." I reached across the table and took his hand. "I love you. Not because you saved my father, not because you gave me a beautiful life, but because you let me see you, the real you, scared and broken and trying so hard to be strong. I love you because you wouldn't let me hide, because you pushed and challenged and refused to accept less than I was capable of giving. We're good for each other. We're perfect for each other, even when we're a mess." We went home that night to our daughters and our life and our beautiful, imperfect love. And I thought about how sometimes the worst situations lead to the best outcomes, how desperation can lead to connection, how contracts can become commitments, how sometimes, when you're at your lowest, you meet someone who shows you what it means to rise. Dante Moretti came into my life as a stranger with a terrible offer. He became my husband through contract, my partner through choice, the love of my life through the slow, painful process of learning to trust. We built something real out of something fake, something lasting out of something temporary, something beautiful out of something that started in desperation and fear. And in the end, that's what love is. Not the fairy tale, not the perfect beginning, but the choice to keep choosing each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Our story didn't start with love, it started with survival, but it ends with something infinitely more powerful. A family built not by blood or obligation, but by the conscious decision to show up for each other every single day. That's the real inheritance, not money or power or control, just love. Messy, complicated, hard-won, absolutely real love, and we wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.